Welcome to Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast focusing on Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. Your host Mono here to bring you a slice of gaming life from Tokyo. Snow is falling, the cocoa is out, so that means only one thing. It's Game of the Year time. Josh from the Still Loading podcast returns as we chat about our favorite games of 2025, both new and old. And I continue the yearly tradition of looking at Japanese gaming pamphlets in stores right now for the holiday season. Let's start with Game of the Year 2025 with Josh from the Still Loading podcast. Check your calendar. It's December. That means Game of the Year time. And I can't do it alone as I'm joined by a special guest. So guest, please introduce yourself.
It's me. I'm back again for our wonderful annual tradition, Mono. It's me, Josh, from the Still Loading podcast. Thanks again for having me on, man. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a while, but I always lock in Josh from the Still Loading podcast for my Game of the Year episode because both of us have truly unconventional picks. You won't find any other Game of the Year list exactly like ours. But I wanted to get back to you earlier this year because a Final Fantasy IX remake was heavily rumored. I know Josh loves that game, so when it comes out, I'll have Josh back on the podcast to talk about it. But it never came out. So Josh, what happened? Where is the Final Fantasy IX remake?
You got to talk to Swear about that one. If they hired me, they would treat Final Fantasy IX like they do Final Fantasy VII and expand it out into a whole bunch. What would be the expanded Final 9 universe? I don't have any idea, but I'm not getting paid the big bucks for that. They can figure that stuff out. No, I am hopeful for a Final 9 remake at some point, but at the same time, would they do the same thing with what they did with Final Fantasy VII and completely revamp the battle system? I don't know. That's a topic for a different day, though.
Yeah, so that's the reason why it's been a while since you've been on, because I've been waiting for the perfect time. But now we can at least talk about games that did come out this year and games that didn't come out this year. Now, all of my games that I'm going to talk about are from the year 2025. Now, Josh, the $1 million question. Did you play a single game that was released in 2025 this year?
Technically, yes. One of them was released on one system in 2024, and the system I played it on, it got released in 2025.
Okay, so that's pretty close. So yes, I guess the hook to our Game of the Year episode, I've got the 2025 games. You've got the games that are still good in 2025. So best of both worlds. This is not some comprehensive overview of every game that came out this year, but we will touch on some awesome games and why they made our year. But before that, we've got the Omake Awards. Omake in Japanese is a freebie you get oftentimes when you buy something. So these are bonus awards in conjunction with our personal Game of the Year list. Now, these are awards we just made up, wanting to highlight something random and fun from games we played this year. I've got 5, you've got 5. So Josh, you're the guest. Let's start. What is your first Omake Award?
We're going to start off with an athletic award. It's called Best Limbs. The best limbs in a game that I've played this year. That goes to Rayman 2.
Okay.
I played Rayman 2 earlier this year. I was guesting on my buddy Dave's podcast, Remember 64, and they were talking about Rayman 2. I forget what the full name of the game is. It's Rayman 2 something. I'm blanking on like...
The Great Escape?
Yeah, it goes... Yes, The Great Escape. Thank you. So I beat Rayman 2, The Great Escape for the show, for his show, and pretty enjoyable. And, you know, I got to give it over to Rayman for best limbs in the business. He doesn't even need shoulders or knees. He just somehow gravitates towards his torso. So shout out to Rayman for that.
Now, is the absence of limbs, does that count as a limb? I guess it's like a phantom limb, would you call it?
He has feet and hands. Are those limbs?
That's my question.
Or limbs just the arms or legs?
If you don't have a hand, but you have an arm, is that your limb? And if you have a hand, but not your arm, is that a limb? I didn't think we'd get so philosophical so early, but that's a great pick. Yeah, Rayman 2, it still holds up in 2025, you'd say.
It's definitely a very 1996-ish, whatever year it came out. Maybe, actually, I think Rayman 2 was a later release. It might have been 98 or 99. It's a pretty good 3D platformer for the era. I would say its biggest issues are, especially on the N64, is frame rate. It chugs a little bit. And there's levels in it where you have to ride like a bullet or some other type of projectile or like a rocket or something like that. And it's not very easy. It's very hard to guide and figure out what the rocket wants you to do or where you're supposed to go. So there's a lot of trial and error with it. A lot of limbs going in various ways after the explosion.
All right, great. That's a great first Omake Award. So my first Omake Award, our first 2025 game that we're going to talk about. I'm going to give it Best Mascot in Promise Mascot Agency, which was an indie game that came out earlier this year. And I'm going to give it to Kofun. If you've never played Promise Mascot Agency, it's kind of a mix between Like a Dragon or Yakuza, kind of a mix between the PS2 GTA games and kind of a mix between a bunch of like business management. It's a truly difficult game to explain. Tremendously unique game. And I interviewed the developer earlier this year on the podcast. We really dug into, okay, what is this game? It's from Kaizen Gameworks, who I think a lot of people know from Paradise Killer. The premise of the game is that you go to a rundown town in Kyushu, and in order to build up the town again, you are recruiting these mascots to help people. Of course, Japanese mascots.
Okay.
Really known well worldwide. Everyone loves and knows these Japanese mascots. And so they make a bunch of quote unquote fake mascots for the game. And these mascots are really creative and funny. The main one is Pinky, a cute version of a dismembered Pinky from some disgraced Yakuza person.
Do you think maybe he's friends with Rayman? You know,
maybe. They both have severed limbs or
severed limbs.
Maybe. But yeah, Pinky's great. But my personal favorite is Kofun. And Kofun is the mascot for a graveyard. In Japan, we have mascots for everything. All companies have some sort of cute mascot. Very common for even something like a clinic to have a specific bespoke mascot. But honestly, in Japan, I've never seen a graveyard have a mascot. Not only is it just a funny concept, but the design is so smart. It's so simple and so smart.
I'm looking at a picture of it now.
Listeners, if you've never seen it, it looks very simple. She has a big green head and she has a dress, like a green dress and green limbs. And so you might think, what's so special about this weird green character? Because it's a play on Kofun, which are these ancient Japanese burial grounds, which are these huge, almost like parks. And they're kind of shaped like a keyhole from an aerial view. So she is shaped like these ancient Japanese burial grounds. So that's a very smart reference to, okay, if you were going to make a Japanese graveyard mascot, you would reference the original Japanese graveyards. She's got a great design. Her voice is amazing. Everyone in Promise Mascot Agency, the voice acting is definitely top tier. When I talked to the developer this year, he said he wanted to be nominated for the Game Awards because the voice acting was so great. And unfortunately, they weren't. But after you play the game, you realize that, the Game Awards made a mistake because somebody from this game should be nominated for something. It has easily the best voice acting I've heard in a game this year. And the voice actress, I didn't know who it was. I looked it up. Her name is Arisa Shida. And this is the voice of Princess Peach in the Japanese version of the Super Mario movie.
Whoa.
So that's pretty crazy.
Okay.
And
yeah,
going back to the voice acting, there's so many other great voice actors. I don't remember his name. I'm so sorry. But the voice actor of Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask is in this game. He voices a mascot in this game. Also, Shuhei Yoshida, the PlayStation ex-president, he voices a character. The voice actor who does Kiryu from Like a Dragon is the main character. So it has an all-star voice cast. But the mascots, they really stand out. There's a lot of great ones, but Kofun, you get her pretty early on, but she remained one of my favorites throughout the game. Best mascot in Promise Mascot Agency. I'm going to give it to Kofun.
I like it. Now, I'm actually very curious about this game to see if it's something I would enjoy.
I did an episode about it earlier this year, so listeners, definitely check it out. Let's move on to your second Omake Award. Josh, what are you giving your second Omake Award to?
My second Omake Award is for the most obfuscated battle system, and that award goes to Golden Sun. I played Golden Sun for the first time this year. It was a fun experience. The reason it gets this award, this very prestigious award, is that in Golden Sun, the battle system is actually really unique and really interesting, but the game does an awful job of describing how to get the most out of it. It's like an interesting combination of classic Final Fantasy-esque battle system mechanics combined with Pokemon. I would say it's like a cross of Pokemon and Final Fantasy VIII in a weird sense. You collect... Have you played Golden Sun at all?
Oh, yeah.
Mono?
I'm a fan of the first two GBA games.
So then you know what I'm talking about with this. You collect Jin and like summons, but you can equip them to your different characters. And depending on which Jin you would equip to a specific character and how you mix and match it and balance it all out determines a lot of different moves that character can use. Each character has an affinity for a different type of element. And you can equip your character with Jin of that same type and it benefits them a lot. But then if you also mix and match, you can really min-max your character stats out in ways you might not expect. There's a lot of depth to it that you can break the game if you understand how to do it. By the end of the game, I finally understood how to experiment with it. I just wish the game would have actually explained how to do it. And that's why it reminds me of Final Fantasy VIII, where you junction guardian forces to individual characters, which are your summons. It dictates how you can increase different stats with magic. Like Final Fantasy VIII, it does not do a good job of explaining all the intricacies you can do with it and how to break the game with it. I would expect the game to teach you enough of the tools that way you can experiment with it to break it. And I feel like both Final 8 and Golden Sun don't really teach you how to use the tools you're given. So most obfuscated battle system goes to Golden Sun.
It has a very unique take on the JRPG battle system. The Jins are such a huge part of it. They affect your stats, your attacks, and you can do a lot of fun things with them, but it can be a little confusing about, okay, should I have 2 Earth Jin and then 3 Water Jin? Does that do something? And yeah, it kind of does. So I think, yeah, you really do need to experiment and play around. I love Golden Sun, but one negative thing about it is that there are missable Jins.
There's 2 on the world map that if you don't randomly walk into, you'll just never get.
Yeah, that's the common criticism about that game. But it is really unique. And I think that the summons are really awesome in the game. The summon animations, those look so cool on the GBA. It's like these huge sprites, all these particle effects. So when you finally unlock that top tier summon, you're like, yes, I can finally see this awesome animation on this 3-inch screen. All right, so my next Omake Award, number 2 for me, I'm going to give it to Best Gaming Exhibit in Tokyo in 2025. And that's going to be The Shape of Mother, which is another exhibit I talked about on this podcast. This is an exhibit based around the Mother series, aka Earthbound. This exhibit showcased the original clay figures that they used in Mother 1 and Mother 2, aka Earthbound, in a lot of promo material, magazine ads, and things like that. They look like almost like 3D renders, but they are clay models. Every single character from both games. I'm talking the protagonist. I'm talking all the enemies. I don't think there's a single enemy or character that does not have one of these clay models. They talked a little bit about it in an interview where they contacted the original artist and he cleaned them up a bit. I was really impressed by just how amazingly preserved these sculptures were. You don't really get a good sense of the size of them until you see them in person. They are about maybe 6 inches or so, and some of them are quite huge. Leviathan it almost feels like 2 feet tall or 2 feet long. Have you ever seen these before? These clay figures from Earthbound?
No, I haven't. I've only played Earthbound. I've not played Mother or Mother 3, so I can't claim to be a gigantic Mother fan in general. I haven't sought them out, but it sounds really interesting. I feel like there are a ton of Mother showcases that I've seen it on your show a lot. I feel like there's at least 1 or 2 every single year based off what I see in your show.
Pretty much, yeah. Shigesato Itoi, who runs Hobonichi, who owns part of Mother, he's always constantly doing Mother events. I always say they probably made more money from merchandise in these events than they did selling Mother 3 or selling any Earthbound game, because they sell just tons of merch. There's always new exhibits. Maybe this was the second one. I don't even remember the first one from earlier this year, but this was the one that really stood out. Last year, it was called The Secrets of Mother 2, where it had a lot of the development documents from Mother 2.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of the concept art, never before seen concept art as well. And at that exhibit, they did have some of the clay figures. So I saw them there. But this time, they're like, okay, here are all of the clay figures. And it's just really amazing to see something you've seen online for years and years right in front of your face. So yeah, that was an excellent exhibit. Unfortunately, you could not take photos, which I think was a little lame. But all these things are photographed online. And my favorite ones, all the protagonists are great. I really like Diamond Dog because his model, it looks like almost like jelly or something. It's not quite translucent, but close to it. And Leviathan is also really great because it's huge. Best Gaming Exhibit, my Omake Award goes to The Shape of Mother.
I am going to have to make a trek out to Japan.
Oh, yeah.
All the way from here at the U.S. just to see an event like this. It doesn't have to be Mother necessarily, but I don't know, just anything.
If you come, no matter when you come, I guarantee you there'll be at least one probably gaming exhibit you can see. So don't worry about coming or leaving empty-handed. There's something going on somewhere at all times. All right, Josh, hit me with your third Omake Award.
My third Omake Award is called The Sweetest of the Short, and it's given to the shortest and sweetest game that I played this year. And this award goes to Astra and the New Constellation. It's a 2D 8-bit style platformer made on the Pico 8. Do you know what the Pico 8 is? Pico 8, for those who don't know, is essentially it's a virtual machine. It's a virtual computer. Pico 8 is almost like an emulator for a system that never existed, right? It's a virtual machine and a game engine that you can develop games for, but it's all very limited based. In fact, the game Celeste has a version for it as well, which you can access. When you buy Celeste, you can play the Pico 8 version of Celeste in the main Celeste game. So you kind of have like a really fun, boiled down version of the gameplay mechanics, like a limited version of it type of thing. Really cool. I first found out about this because they were playing it on a GDQ event, a Games Done Quick event for Summer Games Done Quick. And someone was doing a speed run of it. I'm like, this looks really cool. I think I already had it. Like it was on a Humble Bundle type of thing. So I'm like, oh, I already own this. Let me download and play it. So I downloaded it, played it, beat it in like an hour and a half, and it was awesome. Really charming, really cute, really fun. The animation is simple, but you play as a little star named Astra, and your mission is to create your own constellation. It's really cute. I highly recommend it. It's very challenging at points. It gets tough towards the later stages, but if you like challenging 2D platformers, it's worth your time. The sweetest of the short goes to Astra and the New Constellation.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It definitely looks very cool. You said like maybe 2 hours. If you just have good gameplay ideas until the start to the finish, you can really stand out in the retro platformer sphere. It's always great when you play a game in maybe 1 or 2 sittings and you're like, okay, I'm done. I've cataloged that into my brain. I can move on with my life. I feel like I've accomplished something. Yeah, I'll definitely keep an eye out on Astra.
It's worth it. It's really fun. It's very challenging, like I said, but I'm a fan of games that give you a limited move set, but they iterate within that limited move set so much. I like that because it continuously teaches you further mastery of that move set instead of just giving you new moves or giving you new abilities. Start off with basics, give you a few, and then let you hone in on those existing abilities. And that's what Astra does. The level surrounding your move set changes, and you can interact with the environment differently as the game goes on, as new environmental things come in, but it's all based around that move set, which I find really fun.
All right, my third Omake Award, I'm giving it to Most Remake. Not Best Remake, although you could argue it Best Remake.
Can I take a guess?
Yes.
Final Fantasy.
That's a great guess, and I am going to mention it in this discussion, but I'm going to give it to Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D.
Okay.
These are almost like their new games, because you mentioned Final Fantasy Tactics. I also want to mention that game because both Square Enix, they handle both these games. Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, the new version of that game. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D, the new version of those classic games. They are totally different philosophies. And I don't want to say one is better than the other, but it is so interesting that Square put out both these games so close to each other. And their idea about what is a remake or how to bring this classic game to modern audiences is so different. And it's really interesting because Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, it tries to make the ultimate version of the PS1 game, if that makes sense. Of course, in the PS1 days, they were limited by so many things. They didn't have enough time to finish this or the menus or just whatever. They couldn't put in everything they wanted to. However, instead of making like the ultimate deluxe version of Final Fantasy Tactics, like they could have put in 10 more classes, an epilogue and all this other stuff. It is what if we went back in time and had enough time and enough resources to make our dream game on the PS1. And that's what Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles is. Everything they added, they didn't really add a whole lot, but they fixed or touched on everything and polished everything. So it is like the ultimate version of that PS1 version. Not the PSP version, the PS1 version. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D, though, it's what if we never made Dragon Quest 1 and 2 and we're making them today for the first time, but they have to be pixel games. And they went in with that philosophy. So they are almost like brand new games. Of course, the layout is similar, like Cole is here, Ramuldar, you're an Aleph Guard. But for example, in Dragon Quest 1, because I know you've played both DQ 1 and 2, correct? The original ones.
I've played 1, 2, and 3. I think I ended up beating all of them, but I used guides for 2 and 3. My hot take is 1 is better than 2 and 3.
Yeah, that is an interesting take because I never played the original 1 and 2. I've only been playing these versions. So I have been looking about, okay, what's different between 1 and 2? And the differences are extremely vast. For example, in Dragon Quest 1, it is pretty much like you just go and there's no story at all. It's almost like Ultima in a way. But here they introduce a bunch of new characters, but they're not really named characters. Like when you first start the game, this other RPG party is being attacked, and then you show up and you save them. And the other RPG party, they have funny names like Would-Be Hero or like Meddlesome Mage and like Troublesome Thief and things like that. Not real names, just like funny nomenclatures. And also, I don't know if Robin Hood, he's like this big muscular guy and he's got like a hood on his head. He shows up in Dragon Quest 3, but his ancestor shows up in here because in Dragon Quest lore, it goes 3-1-2 in terms of the storyline. And here they really try to tie in 3 into the story. So it is like the middle and the ending of a trilogy, which is funny because it's 1 and 2. I think the biggest gameplay thing for DQ1 is that now you fight multiple enemies instead of one-on-one, which is like a huge change, of course. You've played Dragon Quest 1, so just imagine if you were fighting 3 other dudes at the same time.
The thing with Dragon Quest 1 that it didn't bother me is like the game was designed around those limitations. Dragon Quest 2 was just too ambitious for its own britches.
And like DQ1 by itself, I think in the original game you get maybe 10 spells or 10 abilities, maybe something around that. But here you get
something like that. Yeah.
Here you get 50 abilities and spells. So they've blown it up in such a big way. DQ2, sadly I've only put a few hours into DQ2. There's a lot of other games that I've been playing, but DQ2, people have been saying, and even just from the opening cutscene, I'm like, there's no way this opening cutscene was in the NES game because it's so huge and epic in scope. And it's like a modern game. The point of my thesis statement for DQ1 and 2, they feel like brand new modern games, but I don't think they sacrificed what made these original 2 games interesting. Since I played Dragon Quest 3 last year, I love Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake. I thought it was an epic game. That everything they added was great. But in Japan, that remake was a little controversial because in Japan, DQ3 is kind of like the Bible. And if you change anything, it's like you're being sacrilegious. DQ1 and 2, they took the feedback from some of the hardcore DQ criticisms from DQ3 HD 2D, and they adjusted it here. They give you way more customization options. You can now turn off the healing when you level up, which you couldn't do in 3 HD 2D. You can customize your map. If you don't want any quest markers, you can just turn all that off. You can also customize the difficulty. They've taken a lot of criticisms from 3 HD 2D, and they really made the definitive versions of 1 and 2 especially. And even just from a few hours playing 2, I can tell that this was not on the NES. There's no way what I'm playing now was 1-for-1 on the NES. And they also added a new character, the Princess of Kenok. So you have a 4-person party now instead of 3-person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a huge difference right there.
So just imagine these 2 changes alone. In DQ1, you fight multiple enemies. DQ2, your party is 4 characters. Think about how you need to balance that and all the things you have to adjust and add. And it's truly wild. So yes, most remake, DQ1 and 2, HD 2D. All right, Josh, hit me with your 4th Omake Award.
My 4th Omake Award goes to most garbage final boss, and that goes to Metroid Prime.
Oh, okay. That's timely.
I didn't even think about that. I was just looking at all the games I played this year. I'm like, what's something that sticks out to me? I try to balance my Omake Awards with something funny, but also something that actually I thought about a lot. And the final boss of Metroid Prime really made me mad.
The titular Metroid Prime.
Yes, the titular Prime itself. My main issue with that boss is that there is just the whole gauntlet to lead up to it. In Metroid Prime, when you fight the Metroids, they'll latch onto you. You have to turn into a morph ball, use a bomb, and get it off of you. Or if you can shoot it beforehand, before it gets to you, that's awesome too. When you fight a Phazon, I forget the exact title, but there's a Metroid that's a step up from your basic Metroid. When you take it out, it'll split into different types of Metroid, and they can only be destroyed by a specific weapon type. If it's yellow, you can use your regular energy beam. If it's purple, you use the wave beam. If it's red, you use the plasma beam. And that's all fine and good, but in the final section, there's a lot of moments where you have to take one of them out, they split, so then you're having to run around while dodging and all this other stuff just to take out the 2 that came out of it. And then as you're trying to climb up, you have to platform up to this area, and if they hit you, they knock you off and you fall all the way back down to the bottom. You have to do it all over again. The final boss has a bunch of stages. Totally fine. I'm cool with that. In the final stage, you have to have a specific visor on to see it. The way you have to kill it, you stand in a spot that allows you to channel power and shoot the Metroid Prime with it, which is, once again, it's invisible, so you have to have the specific visor on so you can see it. While all that's happening, those souped up Metroids that split into multiple things will be attacking you. And like I said, if you're trying to take them out, they split into multiple ones. So you're trying to dodge the Metroid Prime while trying to dodge these souped up Metroids, which can then split into other Metroids. And the only way you can defeat the Metroid Prime is by staying stationary. So you're like a sitting duck, just waiting for this to happen. So you either have to balance, like, how much can I dodge this invisible enemy while trying to go after these other Metroids? Like, how long can I last type of thing. It really was not a fun final boss for me. They didn't give you enough practice with these Metroids, and I don't think they designed it well enough around these souped up Metroids in this final boss. It just felt like there was two contradictory game mechanics they wanted you to do. First, stay still and shoot this thing, and then other times dodge like crazy, but it keeps respawning these things, so it's not like you can take them out and then just wait. They'll spawn more. I hated that boss so much.
Yeah, Metroid Prime 1, I think it's a good game, but personally, I would rank every 2D Metroid over Prime, to be honest. I'm not like a Prime hardcore. And yeah, I remember there's definitely a lot of frustrating boss battles in that game. If it makes you feel better, I think in canon, the Metroids are almost extinct. So you don't have to fight any more Super Metroids or anything like that. Although Prime 4 is coming out, so I assume there'll be quite a few Metroids in that one. But up to Dread, there's almost no Metroids. I'm not quite sure about the lore, or Samus is the last Metroid. It's something like that. So you don't really have to worry about them showing up, or Metroid Prime showing up again in future games, unless she magically shows up in Prime 4, which you never know. So you can be safe from her.
I don't mind fighting Metroid Prime as long as they change the mechanics. I'm happy with that.
All right, so my fourth Omake Award. Now, I'm going to throw the curveball of all curveball. Josh, you've been talking about retro games. I've been talking about 2025 games, but this is a 2026 game that I'm going to talk about.
What?
I can't believe this is on Switch 2 Omake Award, and it's going to Resident Evil Requiem. Now, you might think, did you play this game? The answer is yes, because I played it at Tokyo Game Show this past September. So I'm not just going off of a trailer. I'm going off of my real deal eyes, my real deal hands. I've held the Switch 2 playing Resident Evil Requiem. And
Mono can see into the future.
Yes. And I'm not like a big RE guy at all. Those games are just too scary for me. It's too intense.
I'm with you on that.
I want to relax and play Kirby. But Resident Evil Requiem.
I'm a scaredy boy. Can't handle it.
At TGS, I'm like, I got to try this. Because it was kind of a shocking announcement that, 9 is coming day 1 to Switch 2. People have been talking about, okay, Switch 1 at the end of its life, performance became a big talking point. Oh, this is running really poorly. The resolution is not so great. Some people were worried that is Switch 2 going to be a repeat? Is it going to have these greater and more advanced games, but it's also going to be poor frame rate, poor resolution? But so far, Nintendo Switch 2, they've really proved themselves with a lot of big AAA games running extremely well. First, you had Cyberpunk 2077, then Star Wars Outlaws ran really well, and the new Assassin's Creed Shadows, that looks also like it's going to run well, and Final Fantasy VII Remake that's coming next year. But Resident Evil 9 was truly extremely impressive. I only played it portably mode, but even portably, I didn't notice any frame rate drops or anything like that. The lighting was so amazing because you're in like this creepy house. The lights are off. There's like the moonlight coming through the windows. And this almost felt like a tech demo for the Switch 2 because, okay, this room, it's lit up by red lights. And this room, the light is blinking on and off. And this room is lit up by like a green lamp. So it feels like a kind of a funny tech demo showing off the lighting on Switch 2. It was just impressive lighting, incredibly smooth frame rate. I think Switch 2 is just like constantly impressing. And yeah, Resident Evil 9, I think that's the new benchmark for high quality Switch 2 ports. So I'm really excited to see what other titles come to Switch 2. It does make me think that any game could come to Switch 2, which is technically not true, but it makes me believe that. I can't believe this is on Switch 2 award for 2025. I'm giving it to 2026's Resident Evil Requiem.
That game earns the Josh wishes he had a Switch 2 award.
They'll still be selling it for quite a while, so you have some time. So Josh, hit me with your final Omake Award.
Oh man, to round out my Omake Awards this year, I got this award called the Illest of the Chillest. This award, Illest of the Chillest, goes to Boku no Natsuyasumi 2. More in the same vein over kind of something that might fit for an episode topic for your show, Mono.
Yeah, I have covered the Boku no Natsuyasumi series on the podcast before, but not specifically only 2.
I played 2 for the first time this year. It was a really fun experience. I had Ray Barnholt on the show, and he's a huge Boku Natsu fan, probably one of the biggest advocates for the series out there, next to maybe Tim Rogers after his video a couple of years ago. For those who don't know what the Boku no Natsuyasumi series are, if they haven't listened to your previous episode, Mono, it means My Summer Vacation. And a couple years, I think it was like last year, there was a really ambitious fan translation project that finally got released for the second game, Boku no Natsuyasumi 2. I've been wanting to try this for a little while. I was talking to my friend Andrew, who I every Tuesday over on his Twitch channel, we do a little talk show called Talk Tuesday. We brought it up. He was bringing it up. I'm like, actually, you know what? In thinking of that, it started a little bit earlier, but since the game takes place over the month of August, like the events of the game within the game's world takes place in August, I would play one in-game day for every one day of August. So on August 1st, I played just August 1st in the game. On August 2nd, I played just August 2nd in the game. And you just do that. So it's like a little 20-minute thing that you do. I did it at nighttime at around 10 o'clock after I'm either done recording or editing or any of the podcast stuff. It'd be like 10:30 at night, and I would wind down my day by playing Boku Natsu 2. And it was a lot of fun. It was a really nice way to spend the middle of my summer for 30 some odd days. I did start a little bit before August because I recorded for my Patreon like an audio diary of my experiences through the game, through my first playthrough of the game. So after every in-game day, when I would play it at 10:30 at night, I would finish the day, save, and then I would record like a 5 to 10 minute little thing of, okay, this is what I did, this is what I'm thinking about the game, how I'm feeling. So it was like these little mini audio diaries, and I started it earlier on so that way I would have time to edit those audio diaries so they would be out in August. I played it for the first time. I did an episode literally just a couple weeks. I don't know when this is coming out exactly, but my episode on the game came out in November. But it was a very chill experience. It was a fun, relaxing way to spend evenings in the summer. So Illest of the Chillest goes to Boku no Natsuyasumi 2.
Yeah, that's a series I've talked about before on the podcast. And it is one of those iconic, mostly Japan-only series that really captures some element of Japanese culture. That's why it didn't really get any sort of translation. There is the spiritual successor called Natsumon, which does have a Western release. So if you're a fan of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, you can maybe check out Natsumon, which is very similar. Many of the same people who worked on Boku no Natsuyasumi also worked on that spiritual successor as well. So yeah, that's definitely a good game to check out in 2025. People say 2 is the one to check out of the entire series.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a game where there's not really any objective per se. You know how there is that moniker for Seinfeld, the show about nothing? And that's what I would equate to Boku no Natsuyasumi 2. There's a couple storylines, but they're only there if you seek them out or if you explore or if you continue to pursue down that avenue. Otherwise, there's the basic storyline of why you're there. You can make as much or as little of it as you want. Theoretically, if you spent every day in the summer just swimming in the ocean and doing that type of thing, you could do that. You could spend every day swimming in the ocean, fishing, or doing the beetle battles and not progress any of the character storylines, but it's up to you. It's a very chill game. I enjoyed it.
All right, my final Omake Award. It's called the Pearls Before Swine Award. And I'm going to give it to Welcome Tour, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Now, if you don't like this game, I'm not calling you swine, but I think this game is so underappreciated and it is not for everybody. If you don't know what Welcome Tour is, it's basically a digital exhibit focusing on the Switch 2's hardware. So you're like your little guy and you go around the exhibit, which is shaped like a giant Switch 2, and then you learn about the different parts of the Switch 2, and you play some mini games and also do some tech demos. People dislike this game because it is a paid thing. It's not free. People thought when they saw it, oh, this should be free on your Switch 2. No, you got to pay for it. It's $10. And then when it came out, it got really bad reviews. It's one of the maybe the worst reviewed Nintendo games in quite a while. But I think this game is excellent. And it's such a valuable look into Nintendo's development philosophy. If you care about game history, about Nintendo's product design, this is such an invaluable resource. This is something that people are going to go back to years and years from now and analyze and look at to learn more about how Nintendo makes something. And there's going to be YouTube videos that in years saying that, oh, Welcome Tour was actually good. And there's going to be so many, all the facts in Welcome Tour, they're going to be spread for years and years and years to come. The best part of the game is learning things or the exhibits. You go to kind of like a signboard and then it's kind of like a slideshow of information, but it's not just black text on white. They have original animations, like 3D animations. They have live action video. They have all these bespoke and handmade things in the exhibits that teach you all these different aspects about Nintendo's design philosophy and all the really weird things they had to think about that you don't think about because they thought about. For example, how do they prevent the Switch 2 from shocking you or static shocking you? I think you've probably never thought about your game console shocking you, but they did. And they talk about, okay, this is what we did to prevent static shock from the Switch 2. Or this is why we put the battery in this location on the Switch 2. And this is how we did the heat management. And this is what DLSS is. This is how we render the games from the handheld mode. And also just fun things like, this is Nintendo's history with cameras. Here's all the cameras we've developed. And also, this is the camera in the Switch 2. How is it different from the ones before? How does the camera know when to shut off? It goes so granular in everything. If you're like a tech head, this is like a dream package from Nintendo. And the tech demos are also really great. Now, the mini games, there's a bunch of mini games in here, to be honest. It's a bunch of Mario Party-esque mini games. Some of them are fun. Some of them are just not fun. So I understand people thinking, oh, this is like a Mario Party mini game collection for Switch 2. Doesn't really excel in that part. But as a digital exhibit about the Switch 2's development, about Nintendo history, about product design, it's so valuable. So I think this game is really underappreciated. I cannot recommend it to everybody, though. If learning about Nintendo product design is not interesting to you, then don't get the game. But if you have a deep love of Nintendo and you're really into tech, or you're really curious about how they problem solve all these different things, or how did they start from square one to the final product, I think Welcome Tour is invaluable. It's such a great thing that Nintendo put out that I think it's going to get its fans later on. But for now, it does feel a little bit like pearls before swine. Nintendo threw this like one of a kind look at their development to people and got people who are like, no, that's dumb. I don't like that. So yes, Welcome Tour. I wanted to give it one final shout out before we get into our games of the year.
I can understand where the anger comes from, considering Sony did a tech demo of their PS5 and it was free.
Yes, and Astrobot more fun than Welcome Tour. I will say that.
It's more of a game.
Yeah.
I think the way you're describing it, because I have not played tech demo, so I'm going to reserve judgment for it. If it's like you said, where it's something interesting from a historical aspect, looking into the company's thought processes, their creative edicts, and how they look at console design, then yes, I could see how that would be useful. I think, though, that is misguided as the Welcome Tour. I feel like if they wanted to do something like that's such a niche thing for most people are not going to be interested in that. Most people who play Nintendo are not going to be into that. I think the reason why Astrobot hit off so much because it focused on the game first and used it as a tech demo. What all different gimmicks can we fit into this game in a way that makes sense? Versus what it seems like how you've described the Welcome Tour is just, we're just going to charge for basically a digital tour.
It is like a digital exhibit. It's not so much a game. People, if you're turned off by, oh, I pay money to go to a digital exhibit, it won't be for you. The name in English, Welcome Tour, makes it seem like it's a free thing. But in Japanese, the name is called like the Secrets of the Nintendo Switch 2 exhibit. So they have the word exhibit in the name. So that makes it seem more, that's more what it is. You're going deeper into the Nintendo Switch 2 and learning about how it works. Welcome Tour makes it seem like you're on a tour, you're having fun, you're doing all this stuff. So I think the name is bad in English. I definitely agree with that. So yes, but listeners, if you are interested in that, check it out. If you listened to my spiel and thought you didn't convince me at all, 100% fair. Okay, those were our Omake Awards. But now it's the real deal Game of the Year awards. We each picked 5 games that we played in 2025. Spoilers, all of my games are from 2025. and we're going to talk about how great they are. I'm sorry, I haven't played Metroid Prime 4 Beyond yet. So please allow me to title this Metroid Prime 4 Beyond presents Tokyo Game Life's Game of the Year 2025 with Josh from the Still Loading podcast. All right, so let's get into it. Josh, hit me with number 5.
Okay, so real quick, I have 2 honorable mentions. I promise these will be very quick just because they almost made it, and I will not go into detail with them. But number 7 was Gravity Rush, because I just beat that literally today in prep for an upcoming episode. And Diablo 2 was number 6. I rebeat Diablo 2. That was fun. But my true number 5, the non-honorable mentions, Medal of Honor Underground for the PlayStation 1.
Interesting.
So earlier this year, I did a theme on my show. I do series every year. I do Mario Month, which Mono, you've been a guest on before for various Mario games. So I do Mario Month in March. And then this year I started something new called Punch Nazi Month. And I had 3 games. I covered Bionic Commando. I did Wolfenstein, I did Medal of Honor Underground, and I did Bionic Commando. And so Medal of Honor Underground, I replayed for the episode, for the show. I played it back. There's a lot of nostalgia for that game with me. I played it growing up, and it was really fun to revisit that game. It's still a lot of fun. One of the surprising things about it, like if anyone who likes first-person shooters, it actually has the Halo control scheme built into the game. It's just buried as the 3rd controller scheme layout.
Oh.
It's not quite as fine-tuned as Halo was even on the original Xbox, and obviously it's nowhere near fine-tuned as FPSs are now. But it does give you that control option of the left joystick moves you forward, moves you back, strafe left, strafe right, and the right joystick is your look. And then you can hit R2 to fire and L2 to aim. It made it a lot easier to adjust compared to if you try to go back and play it on its original base controller scheme. That's a lot harder to grasp, at least for me. It's hard to play it like that anymore. So my number 5 goes to Medal of Honor Underground, Punch Nazi Month, which is coming back this year. So that's going to be fun.
What would you say is the hook of the Medal of Honor series? Because I've never really touched it, but the original game, the premise is that, okay, Steven Spielberg is making a realistic World War II game. Would you say that's the hook of Underground as well?
Yes, but I would say as opposed to what Call of Duty is, which is a glorification of war, Medal of Honor is more of a reverence for the sacrifice of it.
Okay.
And it is definitely a little like, it came out in the 90s, right after Saving Private Ryan, which was really into talking about World War II history and stuff like that. They really try to focus on the historical elements of it. It's meant to honor the history of it, as opposed to glorify the violence part of it with more modern first-person shooters. What is cool with Underground, you play as a French resistance fighter named Manon Baptiste, which she is based off of a real French resistance fighter. And it was cool because doing research for the episode, that was controversial, not from the public. The game developers, they weren't quite sure. The publisher was like, should we go with a female protagonist? And they used Lara Croft as an example as to why it would work.
Interesting.
And it was cool because it changed up the game, the mission design too, because you go with much more stealth because you are a resistance fighter trying to fight Nazis in occupied France. And at the end of the game, it was really cool. They had interviews with actual resistance fighters. It was all women resistance fighters that they showed in the credits of the game. So it was cool to play through the game and then hear the inspiration for the events, for the missions and everything that they chose. It was awesome.
I think even now today, I think that take on, let's do a realistic World War II game, but focus on not really glorifying it, but trying to make it as authentic as possible and focusing on these different elements of the war. I think that could still even stand out today, because sadly, Medal of Honor has definitely fallen to the wayside. I'm looking now, the most recent game was from 2020. And you might think, wow.
It was a VR game.
Yes, a VR game. That's why you haven't heard of it. It's because it's a VR game. But then they tried to do like a modern version. But I think let's keep it at World War II. If they ever try to bring it back again, I think going back to the original concept of an authentic, serious take on World War II would be interesting. So yeah, Medal of Honor Underground, definitely really glad to hear that it's still really interesting to play in 2025. I'm looking here, there is a GBA game, which I think it's probably not as good.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay.
You want to see warping textures beyond all recognition. When you walk up to a wall, since they couldn't render all the polygons, instead of having 3D archways, the archways are just it's a picture of an archway, and as you walk up closer to it, the archway will just disappear around the corner because it's like stretching and expanding to simulate you getting closer and farther away to it. It's not good.
All right, my number 5 game of the year. This one was hard because my 1 to 4 spots are pretty locked in, but 5, it could really be all these different games. Do I give it to Final Fantasy Tactics? I typically don't like to put remakes on my game of the year list unless it's a game I haven't played before, and I have played Final Fantasy Tactics before. Do I give it to DQ1 and 2 HD 2D? Do I give it to these other ones? But I think I finally settled on my number 5 game of the year, which is a frustrating but also very immersive experience, and one that I'm still thinking about after I played it, and that is Stray Children from Onion Games. Now, this is, if you don't know what Stray Children is, it's basically a JRPG. I would call it an Undertale-like. It's similar to Undertale. Josh, have you ever played Undertale before?
No, but I own it on Switch. I own a physical copy, and I've been meaning it's on my backlog. Okay. You know what? I do a backlog month every year that my patrons vote on. Maybe it'll win this year if I put it up there.
Onion Games, it's an interesting history because once upon a time, there was a company called Square Enix, and they're still around, but many people from Square Enix, they broke off people who worked on like Final Fantasy VI, people who worked on Chrono Trigger, those classic games. They broke off and they made this other company called Love to Leak. And Love to Leak, they made 3 games. None of them came out in America, but all of them are like cult hits. And their first and most famous game is called Moon Remix RPG Adventure, which was localized for the first time ever in the West a few years ago. After Love to Leak split up, then they made all these other companies. They made Skip, which is famous for Chibi Robo. They made Punchline, which is famous for Tulip. They made Vanpool, which they do a lot of like help for Nintendo games. They also worked on a lot of Kirby. And then those also went away. Finally, we have Onion Games, which is like the last remnant of Love to Leak. And this game, Stray Children, it is kind of the spiritual successor, if not direct sequel to Moon, Love to Leak's first game.
Okay.
It's hard to explain because Moon is like an adventure game, and this is like a JRPG. And Undertale is heavily inspired by Moon. A lot of the aesthetic and ideas and how it tells its story in Undertale is directly from Moon. And this game is so inspired by Undertale. So we have gone full circle.
Okay.
The writer of Moon is like the director of this game. So he made Moon, somebody made Undertale, and then he looked at what somebody else made based on his game and then made a game based on that game. So it's a little confusing. It goes full circle. But the premise...
It almost sounds like it's Street Fighter, the movie, the game.
Kind of. It is like that in a way.
It's a much better version of that.
But basically, the premise is very similar to Moon, where you're a boy, you have a dog face, and you're transported inside a video game. You are trying to get out of the video game and also find your father. And it is a JRPG where you go to these very distinct towns, and then you fight the boss, and you get the item, and then you rinse and repeat. But this game is so unique in just every single element. The aesthetic is amazing. It is like a 32-bit pixel graphics, which you really don't see anymore. People go for 8 or 16-bit, but nobody really hones in on like the PlayStation pixel graphics so much. It looks just like that. It looks like no other game looks like this. The battle system is maybe its most controversial element, but also one of its most fascinating, because the premise of Undertale is that you can kill all the enemies, or you can spare them and talk to them, and then they end the battle, and they not become your friend, but they go away. And the battle system of Stray Children is exactly the same. You can attack them, and your attacking is like this spinner wheel, and so you have to stop the spinner wheel on the right section in order to pull off your attack. And you can do all these combos, so the actual attacking part is a little fun because it is very reactive. There's also the talking part where you can talk to the enemy, which are called the Olders, who are like these embodiments of adult problems, and they've turned into monsters. And so you can talk to them, but in Undertale, it's just like spare. It's attack or spare. And that's basically it. But this time, it's more of like a word puzzle. One of the puzzles is that you have to make an omelet. The options are like egg, oil, vinegar, salt, pepper. And then you have to think about, okay, how do I make an omelet? What do I put in first in the pan? Some of the options you have to pick multiple times, which the game doesn't tell you. When you talked about the Golden Sun obfuscated battle system, this is extremely obfuscated. But only if you want to save everybody. If you just want to attack them, it's pretty straightforward. the like attacking gameplay is really interesting because you do your attack and then the enemy also does an attack. And it's like a shmup style system where you have to dodge the enemy attack. And
that I do know is from Undertale.
Yeah, it's
I've
like
seen
exactly
gameplay
from
of it.
Undertale. But these are way more elaborate and more detailed than the ones in Undertale. Every single enemy has a completely unique attack pattern, and the assets they use to attack you are so unique. And many of them are like parodies and very funny. Like the guy addicted to his smartphone, he attacks you with the Twitter bird logo. So it's a bunch of the Twitter birds come out and attack you. There's another one that's like Pac-Man. So the game just turns into Pac-Man. Another one is Bomberman. The game turns into Bomberman. So you have to dodge the Bomberman attacks. All of these look extremely cool. And every single enemy has a completely different one. Is that core gameplay mechanic of just dodging the enemy attacks is really fun. And I would say in terms of gameplay, that's the most fun element of the game.
Okay.
But it also has a very, very surreal setting and thought-provoking story because you're a kid, but you're dealing with adults who have serious and like kind of relatable problems. And you're also trying to search for your dad, who is like a game developer. He made the game you're stuck in. And so you're just thinking about, okay, is this talking about my dad, or is this world I'm in? Is it reflecting on my dad in some way, or is it reflecting on our relationship in some way? But it's also very silly. There's so many weird jokes and offbeat humor, and all the places you go to are so distinct. You go to heaven, you go to the Frog Kingdom, you go to a prison. I constantly want to go to a new area because every time I go to a new place, it is kind of like Dragon Quest where, okay, new town, new story arc, and then that leads up to the final boss. And then you rinse and repeat for the next area. So it is very episodic in that way. And the enemies you encounter are so different from each other. So it is constantly new and refreshing throughout its gameplay. The $1 million question is that, is this better than Moon? Which is hard to say because the genres are so different. But a lot of the things it does, it takes directly from Moon. Moon is so fresh and original. This time, I can see the playbook that you're playing with. You're using the exact same things from Moon, like characters from Moon. And some of the gimmicks you pulled off in Moon, you're doing here again. The things that really amazed you in Moon, they're back, which is great, but it's not as impressive the second time around. So if I had to pick one, Moon is better, I would say. But this is a really interesting and ambitious take on a Moon follow-up. So yes, my number 5 game is Stray Children.
I have never even heard of Onion Games, like their work. So now I'm going to have to dive down their work at some point. This sounds awesome.
Yeah. Ironically, Onion Games, their other games are not like the Love Delete games. This is their first like real deal. Okay, we're going back to our old catalog and kind of reviving an IP style of game. So I'm very curious about the future, what they do. Are they going to continue these kind of original style Love Delete games, or are they going to do their own thing? Definitely a company to look out for. So, Josh, your number 4 game of the year. Hit me with it.
All right. It is another retro one, but trust me, I actually have 2 newer games. Games that are, at the time this episode will come out, are either barely a year old or just a little over a year old. So there's some newer stuff coming, I promise. But my number 4 is Ratchet and Clank, the original Ratchet and Clank from 2002. For those who don't follow me on Blue Sky or any of that other stuff, I am a giant Ratchet and Clank fan. I love that series so much. In fact, it wouldn't have made it to my list this year because I beat it last year, but I think I actually got it the day after Christmas. I played the newest Ratchet and Clank, A Rift Apart, and I beat it in 4 days. I love this series so much. I replayed the original because I was asked to guest on a different show. That episode fell through, so they ended up not doing it, which was fine because I got to replay one of my favorite games, and it still holds up. I will say, the second game in the series, which is Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, that game really solidified what the formula for the series would be for a long time. This game, however, though, there's a lot of growing pains. So, for example, when you're switching weapons in pretty much every other game after this, it pauses the gameplay and allows you to choose your weapon from the weapon wheel. In this original one, it does not. So you have to run away or be very quick. There's also a lot less health. There's no RPG mechanics. Like in the second game and on, the more you use a weapon, the more powerful it gets. It levels up and can have different abilities and stuff like that. They also have modifiers as the series goes on. In the original game, it's just the weapon you get is the weapon you get. There's no upgrades to it. There's lots of weapon choices, I should say. Like one of my favorites is the suck cannon, where you can take small enemies, suck them up, and then jettison them at other enemies to do a lot of damage. Lots of creativity with all the different weapons. The sense of humor is great. I still think the visuals hold up well enough. They're definitely cartoony and very PS2, but I think they look good in a retro aesthetic, if that makes sense. It's got good retro PS2 vibes. So I loved replaying this. I will say the original, there's some like rougher character moments. There's a different voice actor for Ratchet. They eventually got James Arnold Taylor to be Ratchet for pretty much since the second game on. David Kaye has been Clank though since the initial game. It's their first kind of attempt at this style game, so there was a lot of growing pains with it, but overall they nailed it for the most part. It's a really fun game, and I was so happy I got to revisit it.
Yeah, it's always a little scary going back to a game you loved as a kid, and you're like, okay, is the nostalgia going to wear off? Are the flaws going to appear? So it is really great to hear that, okay, you loved this game originally, and then you're playing it again in 2025, and it still hits.
Absolutely. I would say its biggest flaw is its storytelling, but they did a reimagining in 2016 for the PS4. I will actually, on a little soapbox here, I actually think they messed up the story a bit. They made Ratchet and Clank a little too chummy. In the first game, they were more at odds because they were just getting to know each other still. There is a falling out between them. They still have to work together, but there's animosity. In the remake, there's not nearly as much of that. I think that kind of is a disservice to the characters because it softens the amount of growth they do together as friends in that first game. So that's me being on a bit of a soapbox. But yeah, it's a good game. Definitely worth. If anyone wants to try it out, I honestly recommend the remake or the reimagining just because it's much more polished. You get the same basic gameplay and story, but for a 2002 PS2 game, it's pretty good.
Have you ever seen the original Japanese box art for Ratchet and Clank? Because he has much bigger eyebrows in Japan than he does in the West.
I'm seeing the second game, the promo art for the second. I love that it's like a cartoon, though.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to, again, Boku no Natsuyasumi, they're like, oh, this is maybe too Japanese for Western audiences. And then in Japan, they're like, how can we make Ratchet appeal to Japanese audiences? These two cultures are just so different. There's no way they could
give him more eyebrow.
It's so funny. I really love that, though, just seeing they really overthought it back in the day. Now it's just, okay, day one worldwide release, same game, just go. But it is funny to see these differences. Mm. All right, my number 4 game of the year. This is a shocking one for me, but it is Hollow Knight Silk Song.
Wow.
Now, on January 1st, 2025, if you told me that Silk Song was coming out this year, I would say, no, it's not. And if you told me that I would buy it, I would say, no, I won't. And then even if I did buy it, I'd probably play it for maybe an hour or two and then fall off, like I did with Hollow Knight. I played the original Hollow Knight for a few hours. I can tell it's a very well-made game, but it was just too frustrating. But Silk Song, I really stuck with it. I played it to completion. I'm so surprised this is on my Game of the Year list at all. This is not something I would have ever imagined. It's so straightforward, but the gameplay is so clean, and everything they wanted to do in the game, they pull off perfectly. Because on paper, it's not so different from any other Metroidvania. Like you unlock a double jump and then a wall jump. These powers are not special. These have been in so many other games before, in every single Metroidvania. But the way that you control your character feels so perfect. It controls the way you want it to control, which I think is super important in these types of games. It has a very propulsive story and mission structure. Again, going back to Stray Children, I kept playing Stray Children because I kept wanting to go to these weirder and more unusual and visually arresting areas. Hollow Knight Silk Song is exactly like that, where every single area looks so distinct and looks so evocative. And you really wonder, okay, what is this place hiding? What enemies will I encounter? I really want to see the next area. It's similar to Dark Souls and Elden Ring in that way, where this game is really hard and frustrating, but I'm getting pulled along in an interesting way. I want to see what else the game has to offer. And Silk Song is like that. It is extremely difficult. I think I died more in this game than maybe any other game I've ever played. And I do wonder, is this the hardest game I've ever beaten? I think like maybe there's some JRPGs that are maybe technically harder. Maybe Final Fantasy Tactics itself is technically harder, but that is a thinking and planning type of game. This is a doing game. You got to execute. And there were so many times where I was just insanely frustrated. And I was like, I'm just going to drop this game if I cannot beat this boss. But I kept with it. And it's hard to explain why, because I am very much I've got other stuff to play. I play games for fun. I play games to relax. Where's Kirby? I just want to play that. I don't want to play this extremely tough boss gauntlet rush. But Silksong, there's something about it that is hard to parse into words. I just think the combination of so many secrets and fun things that you can find that really do change up the gameplay. You do find a lot of things that you think, okay, this changes everything. This one item, it really changes the game. Then every area you go to, you want to find out, okay, what's the deal with this area? Getting stronger and unlocking new abilities feels so good. It feels excellent to sprint, then dash, then hover, then double jump, then wall jump. Again, all these different abilities you unlock, they're not amazing on paper. I try to think about Animal Well, a game you played as well, right? You played Animal Well.
Yeah.
I think that game is like unlike any other Metroidvania, right? Because you unlock a slinky, and there's no other game where you're unlocking a slinky. And that's more like puzzle focused. This game is kind of the opposite of Animal Well in that both are great Metroidvanias, but Animal Well, it excels in that it kind of does the opposite of what you would expect in a Metroidvania. Silksong does exactly what you would expect in a Metroidvania, but it does it perfectly. Everything you do feels like it's been honed to the sharpest of edges. When you're playing it, when it's in your hands, it feels fantastic. So I think this is definitely a top tier Metroidvania. So yeah, shockingly, my number 4 game of the year, Hollow Knight Silksong. What about you, Josh? Have you ever played Hollow Knight at all?
I have, and I did not enjoy it. Might go back to it and give it a shot again. My main issue, honestly, was a combination of how the map system works. It's a similar issue I have with Dark Souls, where the checkpoints are before the bosses are very frustrating. The bosses are crazy difficult, which I'm okay with, but it feels like it's so much harder to learn the boss's patterns when you have to go through 5 to 10 minutes of other rooms that you can't skip. And it's not, okay, in Hollow Knight, it's not 5 to 10 minutes. In Dark Souls, it's like
it oftentimes feels like that, though. It might not be that, but it feels like that.
It drove me up a wall. By the end of dying like 6 or 7 times, I'm like, I don't feel like walking down this hallway for the 7th or 10th time just to die within 30 seconds because I still am trying to figure out this boss's mechanics. But you saying that you enjoyed Hollow Knight Silksong, which I've heard is harder than the original Hollow Knight.
I kind of wonder that as well, because the way you moved in Hollow Knight, I felt like his jump was a bit heavy, and also your range is not super great. Here, you're really fast, and you have kind of a longer range because you have a spear weapon as opposed to your really weak sword. And a lot of the things that frustrated me in Hollow Knight, they are back in Silksong. Like the weird map system, that is back 1-to-1. And I think I'm trying to think about why did I hate it so much in Hollow Knight, but not here. I don't want to say it's easier, but maybe I understood about what it's trying to do a bit more. And I tried to think about how the levels were designed around it. So I wasn't super frustrated with the map. And I tried to focus on just explore and you'll get to it eventually. And then you do unlock the normal map stuff. After an hour or two, from then on, the map will be fine. So you can just power through that first area. You'll get the normal map later on. And the runbacks, they're still in this game. But again, I felt like they're not as brutal as they were in Hollow Knight because you are just so quick and you are so speedy and you can do just like all these wall jumps and all this crazy stuff that you really couldn't do as much in Hollow Knight. I was doing a run back in Hollow Knight. I just died. It sent me back what felt like 300 miles away from where I was. And I'm like, I'm done with this. But Silksong, yeah, people are saying it's harder. Maybe I'm just crazy, or maybe I just got what the game is going for now. But the earlier parts of Silksong felt easier than the earlier parts of Hollow Knight. So yeah, for me, I just had a complete 180. I don't know why. I can't say, oh, if you hated Hollow Knight, you'll love Silksong. Don't worry. I can't say that at all because it has a lot of the same ingredients, but it just clicked with me somehow, some way. Yeah, number 4, Hollow Knight Silksong. So Josh, hit me with your number 3 game of the year.
Believe it or not, this is the final retro game of my top 5. My top 2 are non-retro. My number 3 is the original, the classic Castlevania for the NES. Up until this year, I had never beaten the original Castlevania. I was going into it expecting to be mad most of the time because it's an old NES platformer with very stiff mechanics. I was expecting when you lose all your lives, you have to start all over or start back at the beginning of the level. And I was expecting to be pretty mad at it. I was, however, pleasantly surprised where I actually got through it with relative ease. I did one save state. Believe it or not, I only had one save state the entire time I played it, which I count as a win. I forget when I used it like one time, but it was like something where it didn't feel like there was no save scumming or anything like that. So anyway, I beat it, and what surprised me was just how fair it was. The game's levels are designed around the stiff movement mechanics of Simon Belmont. When you jump, you have to commit to the jump. You can't change the trajectory midway through like you can with Mario. He's committed to that same arc no matter what. You have to be very intentional with your jumps and where you're jumping to and knowing what enemies are on the screen, and you have to be very intentional with everything with it. Once I understood that, it made it a lot easier. The final section, like the final level, is absolute garbage. That could have also won award for the most garbage final boss, but it was the final level. Once you get to Dracula, which is very hard, you respawn right at the stairs right beforehand, even on the original NES version. Even if you lose all of your lives, normally that means you start at the beginning of the level. Not in this. Once you get to Dracula, it just starts you right back from the stairs. It's a really challenging boss. It takes a while to learn the mechanics, but they start you right before it. You just walk up some stairs, down a hallway, and then you're there. It's great. So I beat that for the first time and had a wonderful conversation with Jeremy Parrish from Retronauts. It was a really enjoyable experience. The visuals are still great. I think it looks really good for an 8-bit pixel art game. Obviously, the music is fantastic. Shout out to Game Chops. For those who don't know, Game Chops is like a video game remix music label. They have 2 really great remix albums called Vlad 1 and 2, done by a dude named Joshua Morse. Fantastic Castlevania remix albums. Listening to the original and then that, it was such a great experience. I played that back in March and it's still stuck with me. I loved it.
Yeah, Castlevania 1, definitely a classic. Very, very hard. Ironically, if you think about it, Dark Souls is basically Castlevania. They just made a good 3D Castlevania. All the things they take, or all the things that's interesting about Dark Souls, a lot of it does come from the structure of the Castlevania games. And yeah, the original...
Yeah.
I've only played a little bit of the original. I have played Super Castlevania 4, though, which is kind of like a weird remake of the original, but also greatly expanded. Simon Belmont stance, iconic stance. Sakurai copied it 1-for-1 for Smash Brothers. So yeah, Castlevania 1, I'm glad to hear that it still really holds up well today. But I have to imagine it is quite difficult. So I think if I ever sat down and played it, I would be abusing save states quite a bit.
I think as long as you know going into it that it's going to be challenging, it's a lot better than you would expect it to be. It's one of those things where I knew it was going to be really hard going into it, so it made my enjoyment last a lot longer than it probably normally would have. So yeah, I think one of the reasons I bounced off Hollow Knight, to bring it back to that momentarily, is I wasn't expecting that level of difficulty going in and the game design choices they would make. Now I think going into it knowing those design choices, sometimes that's all I'll need to reframe a game, and then maybe I'll enjoy it again next time I give it a try.
All right, my number 3 game of the year. We're entering the Nintendoverse. Goodbye, third-party games. And I'm going to give it to Mario Kart World, the Switch 2 launch game. And they went with a very different direction for this one. Because after Mario Kart 8, what do? You've got almost 100 tracks. You've refined the racing. And this is what people have been playing for pretty much 10 years. Mario Kart 8 came out in 2014, and they've been updating it and changing it since then. So 10 years later, what do you do with a new game? You go in a different direction. You have to. Because if you just do the same thing, but, here are 30 tracks, it's not as interesting. The big addition is, of course, the open world and the free roam mode. It's got a lot of criticisms, but I really love the open world because it's huge and it's filled with a lot of unique challenges. There's 394 P-switch challenges. And you drive over a P-switch and then do all these different activities and challenges you wouldn't really do in a normal Mario Kart race. So it's interesting to see how they reframed the Mario Kart mechanics in these different challenges. And Also, there are these peach coins that you can collect that are really hard to get. It's almost like they designed Mario Kart World to be like a platformer, like a car platformer. Because, okay, it's how do I get up to this castle? I'm driving a car. How do I do this? But the new mechanics they added, like the wall ride and the rail grind, these are really smart mechanics, really fun to use. They're a bit harder to pull off than you would think, because Mario Kart is a very casual game. Just anyone can pick up and play. But if you want to get good at the wall riding and the rail grinding, you do have to practice it a little bit. So I think for maybe some of the more casual gamers, they're like, oh, how do I do this? Or how do I take advantage of it? But I really love the tech in this game. It's much deeper than you would think. People say, oh, there's nothing to do in the open world, but you drive. That's what you're supposed to do. You need space to drive around. It's not like I got to go to this quest or I'm got to open a treasure chest type of open world type of a game. You're not exploring a cave or anything like that. But it is fun to drive. And I think how the world is laid out is really smart. And it's really fun to see this perspective on the Mario world. It's what would happen in the Mario world if there wasn't a game going on. If Bowser was not attacking the Mushroom Kingdom, what does it look like normally? It looks like this. People are driving to work. There are really fun and beautiful landscapes and places you can visit. Some of the places you go to are just so funny and creative. There's a Mario version of Jurassic Park in the game. It's like this dinosaur scientific facility, but dinosaurs are roaming around, and it is like they ripped off Jurassic Park. It is so funny. There's like a big bridge. It's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge, and all these different places you've never really seen before in a Mario game, but you can freely drive around and look at them. It looks and sounds incredible. The soundtrack, I think, unbelievable soundtrack. It has so many great original songs, but also fantastic remixes. They remixed the Mario drawing song from Flipnote Studio, which is
really,
yes, as deep as a deep cut you could possibly get. If you want to do a 3-lap race in the Grand Prix, I think those tracks are also just really fun to do as well. They're really different from the other Mario Kart 8 tracks. And yeah, mechanically, it's really sound, and all the things they added make it a deeper experience than Mario Kart 8. Maybe a bit too deep for some people, though, because the things they added, a little hard to take advantage of. So I understand that, oh, I don't know how to do it, so I'm just going to race and ignore that. I think a lot of the criticisms are for Mario Kart World maybe a little unfair. I can understand the perspective of, okay, the open world is a little boring. You just kind of drive around. But I thought it was fun to drive around this big Mario world. I really love the Mario lore and the universe. So to be in it is really cool. And I liked chilling out during this time because at this time I was also playing Cyberpunk 2077 for the first time this year. And Cyberpunk 2077 is a game you got to think and, oh, I need to change out my loadout. How am I going to tackle this? But I can really only play games kind of late at night. And so sometimes I just want to turn off my brain. I don't want to think about my Cyberpunk build. I just want to drive around this Mario city, listening to this beautiful music and just chill out and relax. And Mario Kart World gave you that. Is it better than Mario Kart 8? I think if you're going for the 3-lap races, the 1s and 8 are really hard to beat. There's so many of them and they're so great and they've been burned into my brain. I know exactly when to hit the turn in Electrodome and so forth and so on. In Mario Kart World, I haven't mastered the tracks yet. Maybe I never will. But I do love that they went a different direction with Mario Kart World. So my number 3 game of the year, Mario Kart World.
It's interesting. When I saw the announcement for World, I was excited just because, A, Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart World, the connection's kind of fun. But they took a cue from the Forza games.
Yeah.
Because Forza had Forza Horizon, I believe, was an open world and stuff like that, but obviously meant to be more realistic than kart-based. So it was cool to see Nintendo go, let's do our take on that. Now, I did hear, this is not my take, but I've heard from multiple people's hot takes that the Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is actually better than Mario Kart World.
I haven't played Sonic yet, so I can't say, but I think they go for different things. I think Mario Kart, they really do emphasize the open world aspect. And so if you're not into that, if you just want the 3-lap tracks, I understand the frustration. The new feature they added is called Knockout Tour, which is a great new mode where you drive through 7 Mario Kart tracks consecutively inside the open world. So you'll do like 1 lap of track 1, and then you'll drive through like a connecting road. And then you'll do 1 lap of track 2 and so forth and so on. But there's cutoffs. You have to be placed 20 or above or you lose. And the next track is you got to be placed 16 or above or you lose. So it's elimination style racing. I think that's the most popular mode for online, but that is different from like the 3-lap track race from your traditional go in a circle 3 times. The ones in Mario Kart World, you can do that, but if you want to do that online, it's really cumbersome. They want you to do like the connecting tracks. Okay, you drive in the open world for maybe 2 laps, and then you drive into the actual track 1 lap, and then that's the race, which I think is not a smart decision because the connecting tracks are in the Knockout Tour mode. And so why wouldn't you just have the 3-lap track online? Like only 3-lap track. Why are they not 2 separate modes? Why are they blending into each other? I understand that some people might prefer, I only want to do a 3-lap track style of race. And maybe Sonic has that. So I think that's a fair take to say that the new Sonic is better than the new Mario Kart, because it does go for a different idea. But I had a great time with it, and I'm still playing it every now and then. So Josh, let's jump into your number 2 game of the year.
All right. Going into actually modern things for the first time, I think, on my top 5s. I don't remember. So my number 2 is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it came
played
to PS5 this year, so let's count it as a 2025 game.
Yes, and it was out in December of 2024, so technically by the time this comes out, it's...
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is counting.
So I'm going to count it at the very least. I played it for the first time, really enjoyed my time with it. I was pleasantly surprised by it. What's interesting about it is that when I was going into it expecting Indiana Jones, I was thinking like an Uncharted knockoff. I'm glad. I feel like it should have been obvious. They're not just going to rehash Uncharted. Why would they do that? But it's a much more slow-paced, exploratory, stealthy game where you're sneaking around large, intricate levels. You can get in disguises to sneak into different restricted areas. There's lots of side missions and whatnot. There's your main missions filled with collectibles. And normally I'm not a fan of collectathons, but this is a collectathon done in a right way where all the collectibles add to the world building. They're all part of either some side story or the main story, or they're there to add flavor to the world. Each of the locations are very interesting and varied. You start off in the Vatican in Rome. You end up going to the pyramids in Giza. You go to a place called Sukhothai in Siam, which was the name of Thailand back then. Then finally you end up at the Ziggurat Ore in, I believe that's in Saudi Arabia, if I remember correctly. I can't quite remember. But you go to those different locations. It's a very good Indiana Jones story. The Great Circle is very Indiana Jones-esque and it works really well. The actor who plays the villain, Emmerich Voss, fantastic. He's unhinged. He's chewing the scenery so often. It's great. The gameplay was just really cool. When you're doing platforming type of stuff, it switches from first person to third person, and then it switches back to first person once you are walking around. One of the reasons they did that was because one of the things about Indiana Jones is you want to see Indy in the hat. You want to see his design. That is a very iconic character design. And if you're in first person the whole time, you can't see it. So they fixed that by having the game go into third person in different moments and then switch back to first person. They do it very seamlessly. The camera suddenly zooms right back into first person view after you're done the platform, zooms out when you start a platforming moment, whether it's to climb up a wall or use your whip. It's really cool, really interesting design, and it's just something I was not expecting. I heard the game was good, and it was developed by Machine Games, who did the newer Wolfenstein games, which I adored. I was hopeful. The newer Wolfenstein games are just chaotic first-person shooter. There's no stealth. It's just all guns blazing. Knowing what Machine Games' MO is, I figured it was going to be more of that. And it wasn't. It was something very subdued and different, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's the game I've heard a lot of great things about, and it is coming to Switch 2 next year. So, and also I think one other element that really interests me is that it's first person, but the action combat is not so focused on shooting people. It's not so much a first person shooter, which I think is a really interesting take on the genre. And when they announced Indiana Jones, I kind of want a third person action game. I haven't really been super convinced by first person action games that are not FPS style games. But here it looks like they do something really different and really interesting. And also the puzzle element, solving it in first person, they seem to have a really cool take on it. So this is definitely on my radar. I definitely want to pick it up when it comes to Switch 2 next year.
I'm very excited. And this might be a little hint as to what I'll be playing next year. I can guarantee you, Mono, I'm going to be playing a game from 2026 in 2026.
I'm shocked.
Because, what is it? When this game was announced, when Indiana Jones was announced, it was the same time that the new James Bond game was also announced.
Okay, yes.
I am a huge James Bond fan. I adore that franchise, and it's something I've been a fan of for a long time. IO Interactive did the Hitman games, and I really liked the Hitman remake from 2016 or 15 or whatever year it came out. And I own the second one, have yet to play it, but I own it. And when I saw that they were going to do the new James Bond game, I thought that was a perfect fit. When Indiana Jones was announced with Machine Games and James Bond with IO Interactive, I was so excited for both of these. So I'm happy that at least one half of these games that I've was excited about have already delivered on the promise. So I'm hopeful that IO Interactive's James Bond game will also deliver on said promise.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the IO Interactive, the new Hitman games, the World of Assassination trilogy. I love those games, and I'm really looking forward to First Light as well. So we might have a crossover next year on our Game of the Year list. All right, so my number 2 game of the year, Kirby Air Riders, which just came out not too long ago. And this game kind of came out of nowhere because, Sakurai is making a new Kirby Air Ride game for the Switch 2. That would not be on my bingo card at all. Everyone assumed he was hard at work on Smash Brothers. Maybe he secretly is. But during the Switch 2 Direct, they announced Kirby Air Riders, which was really shocking. If you told me, because they also announced, From Software is making a new exclusive game for Switch 2. That's way more believable than a new Kirby's Air Ride game. Because, of course, I'm a huge Kirby fan. Kirby's Air Ride on GameCube, it was undercooked. I would say it's one of the worst Kirby games, to be honest. This is a top-tier Kirby game. Maybe even, I don't want to say the best Kirby game, but I've been playing a lot of it, and I'm totally addicted to it. It's such a completely unique take on a kart racer. And calling it a kart racer is almost like disingenuous because racing is the tool you use in order to interact with the game's systems. And there's so many different ways you can play this game. There's so many different modes that are all different from each other that are loosely themed around racing. So it's kind of its own genre. It's an Air Rider-like, if I had to give it a genre. And I think why it's so addictive is that, of course, Masahiro Sakurai, he knows how to make a fun game. He knows how to penetrate the deepest parts of my brain to find out what's fun for me. I think why it excels is that it's so content rich. There are so many things you can do in the game. There are kind of 4 main modes, and they're all different from each other. There's Air Ride, which is just your traditional racing mode. There's Top Ride, which is like a top-down racing mode. Like, think of an old school NES style racing game. And there's Road Trip, which is like the story mode, but also is similar to the classic mode from Smash Brothers. And there's City Trial, which is kind of like its own genre in and of itself. And I would argue what the game is most famous for. So you could focus on, I only want to play City Trial for 100 hours. You could do that. Or you could only focus on the racing part. There's also a machine customization mode, where you can decorate your machine. And this mode is so deep. It is like similar to Forza, where you can make your own pattern. You can spend hours just in that mode and jump around and do whatever you want to do. It is like a playground for this Kirby racing idea, and you can do whatever you want. For me, I like to do, I want to do some City Trial, then I want to do Air Ride, and then I want to do Top Ride. If you get burned out on something, there's always something else to do. It really rewards experimentation because your kart and character combo are so different from each other. You auto-accelerate, so quite different from Mario Kart or other racers. You really only go left and right, and you have one button. It's the B button, and you press or hold it, and what you do with the B button is context sensitive. So if you hold it and you hold left around a turn, it is your typical like drift boost. But you also copy abilities because there's other enemies on the field, and you copy abilities. You suck them up by tapping B. Depending on your power, how you use it also depends on how you press B. For example, freeze, you need to hold B. But for plasma or fire, you need to tap B. So how you use this one button is really context sensitive depending on where you are in the course, what power you have, what machine you have. Some people are very frustrated by the one button control because depending on what you do or where you are, the button is totally different. But for me, I think this is such a smart take on the racing mechanics, and it really separates itself from Mario Kart. There's so much experimentation you can do because Kirby on the Warp Star is different from King Dedede on the wagon. Some machines are really good at flying. There are some machines that have special attacks. There are some machines that are like tanks that are really good for attacking people. So it really rewards experimentation, not just in terms of, okay, what combo of character and machine, but also the mode. This kart combo is really good for city trial, but not for air ride. This one is really good for top ride, but not for road trip. It's just so content rich. You could spend hours and hours just sampling everything the game has to offer. It is like a huge buffet, a big Kirby buffet. And the game, yeah, it's just addictive to me. Maybe some people won't be into it, but every single mode taps into what I think is fun about video games. It's just so quick to get into. There's a lot more depth than you would possibly imagine. Again, go back to one button. That one button does quite a lot. And it is like a love letter to Kirby. It is like Kirby Smash Brothers in a way. Imagine if Smash Brothers was only for Kirby. That's what this game is. All the character choices are so smart. Even though Sakurai, he hasn't really touched Kirby in quite a while, he knows exactly who to put in the game. He knows people want to be Rick, the hamster. He knows people want to be Marx or Taranza. And he also knows, okay, there are boss battles in this game. What Kirby characters do people want to fight? He knows that people want to fight Zero Two and Nightmare. So he's so locked into the Kirby fandom. And it takes everything that's great from Smash Brothers, everything that's great from Kirby, everything that's great from Mario Party, everything that's great from Mario Kart, and blends them into a really unique package. And that's what Kirby Air Riders is. Sakurai has delivered the ultimate Kirby's Air Ride experience. So number 2, Kirby Air Riders.
That is really interesting. You've honestly sold me on it. Once again, I don't own a Switch 2 yet. When I saw that the new Air Riders was coming out, the first thing I actually thought of, I have a friend who's it's been a while since they've been on the show, named Brenna. They're a huge original Kirby Air Riders fan. So I texted them and I was just like, holy crap, can you believe it? So I was really excited for them. But it was nothing that was all that interesting to me. But the way you're describing it makes it seem a lot more, it seems like I'd actually be willing to give it a shot, because I'm also not a big kart racing fan. It makes me happy to hear that he did in this, and it seems like more games will do it, is that it's just packed full of content, because I miss the days when games were just packed with extra stuff that you weren't really expecting. You're expecting one part of the game, but then they end up adding so many new things or so many extras and add-ons just because they could or because they wanted to. I'm very curious to maybe give this a shot someday.
Yeah, it's definitely content rich. And it is very old school in a way where here are the modes, and then you just play the modes over and over again. The fun comes from playing the game. Of course, there's still many, many things to unlock. There is a challenge board. So you can get really addicted to that where, okay, I want to unlock every single item on the challenge board. And each mode has 150 of them, and there's 5. So do the math. That's like what, 700 or 800 individual challenges that unlock something that you can really tackle. So if you just want to play it like that, you can just lock in and try to unlock everything. And yet the gameplay modes itself are so fun. Like Air Ride, I didn't even really talk about what you do in a race and how is it different from Mario Kart. It is almost like a battle in a way where you really do need to focus on attacking the enemies in order to gain ground and using your powers in a smart way. But it is also a really good straight up racing game where you do need to hit those turns. You need to drift perfectly. And you do need to hit the boost pads and everything like that. So as a racer, it's really intense and exciting and very different from Mario Kart. Depending on your machine, the strategy is totally different. Some machines are really beneficial for flying. So you're thinking, oh, I need to hit the ramp and fly over this section of the map. The wagon can't boost at all. So you really need to focus on making sure those turns don't mess you up. And also the city trial is like the claim to fame, which is hard to explain. It's like a big open hub, and you run around collecting power-ups, and then at the end of the 5-minute time period, you do like a mini game, and then you win or you lose the mini game. It's hard to describe the fun of City Trial. I just think because every time you play it is totally different. There's all these different events, and it's so chaotic, and you always feel like you're kind of improving or you're learning more about how to build up your character, and you're switching machines. It's just every time you play it is totally different, which I think is part of why the game is so addictive. Every single time, it just feels different because you can always experiment with a different kart combo. The modes are so different. What happens in a race is not going to be the same every single time. There are more variables here to play in Kirby Air Riders. So it's just so content rich. It's so addictive. It's so different every time you play it. So yeah, it's just a huge love letter to Kirby. So Kirby Air Riders number 2. So Josh, now is the time. 2025 Game of the Year. What is it, Josh?
Well, I'm happy to say it is also a relatively new one. Not quite brand new, but it did come out in late 2024, like September or October, and that is Astrobot.
Ooh, that was on my Game of the Year list last year as well.
Gosh, do I love that game. That was one of the most... playing that game reminded me the feeling of joy of playing games again. Like, it reminded me of the same joy I had as a kid. There'd be so many moments where I was just smiling ear to ear just because the creativity and everything was just so apparent. It was just so fun. Maybe it's because like my first games were 3D platformers, Donkey Kong 64, and Ratchet and Clank, and Jak and Daxter, and this is like a really good version of a 3D platform, like a really solid 3D platformer. It's finally Sony's answer to Mario in a weird sense. Like, I know Astrobot doesn't have the same charisma as Mario, but I do think this shows they can make a game on par with Mario Odyssey or a prestige Mario 3D platformer. I think it's on the same level as that. There is so much creativity. It does help with the nostalgia factor. There is a lot of PlayStation nostalgia built into the game, but I think if you take that PlayStation nostalgia out of it, it is still just as good. I will say the nostalgia definitely helps a bit, but you know what? Mario Odyssey had nostalgia helping it out too. And I think Astrobot does the same for PlayStation in a really good way. It doesn't feel very pandery. No, all those obscure references are all just, if you really want to dive in and further explore the game and collect all the different bots, that's where you find them. I loved this so much. I guested over on my buddy Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog. He has a podcast, Tales from the Backlog, on his episode on December 24th, the day before Christmas, will be my episode on Astrobot with him. It was a really fun conversation. I loved this game. Surprisingly enough, I did not talk about it on my own show this year, even though I played it just for fun. But sometimes I try to balance playing games for the podcast and games for fun, and this just happened to be a games for fun thing. And I loved it, and I wish I could re-experience it again for the first time again. I have done that vicariously through my daughter, who is 4. She plays this. She's actually pretty good at it.
Oh, nice.
Which it's really cool to see, and especially considering dual stick controls like movement and camera is a little complex for a 4-year-old. She's better, that she likes it enough that she is stuck with it to the point where she actually is pretty good. And it's funny because the controller is still too big for her hands. Seeing her tiny little hands trying to finagle around the buttons is a little funny. Also, one final shout out for the game. When you run towards an edge, grateful for this for parents if you have kids who are thinking of trying out the game. You can't run off the edge. You can jump off, but if you are running straight to the edge and the kid doesn't realize that they're at an edge, Astrobot will just stop and teeter whoa, I'm going to fall off. But they won't unless you actually hit the jump button and jump off. So it's nice that you can't accidentally run off the edge. You have to purposely jump off the edge. So it makes it a little bit nicer for any gamers who might have youngins who are still learning the ropes of video games. So yeah, Astrobot's my number 1, man. I adored this game.
Yeah, I played it last year when it came out, and I believe it was my number 2 game of the year last year. So I hold it in high regard. And I think they did add, I complained last year that there was no Cloud or Sephiroth in the game. They didn't have any Final Fantasy characters, but I think they did add them into Astrobot afterwards. Did you see Cloud at all?
Yes, I did see Cloud.
Okay, he wasn't in the version I played, so I was a little sad, but he's finally back where he should be in Astrobot. It is a really excellent, just straight up platformer. It is like Super Mario Galaxy 3 in a way, in that it is like these kind of linear levels, and they're really focused on constantly introducing new ideas, and it is very power-up focused. What was your favorite power-up?
I would have to say the frog punchy arms.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the time slow mechanic.
Yes, that too.
That one was really awesome. But yeah, Astrobot, definitely a great game. I hope in the future they expand his moveset a bit more. I'm really excited and looking forward to what they do with Astrobot. But I think we will get another Astrobot game in the future.
I hope so, man. I really do, because I think they found something special with this one. And I don't think they'll be able to repeat all the PlayStation nostalgia of it, which is fine. But there is enough there that you could definitely continue the Astrobot series and find new ways to do it. Like, yeah, you get some power-ups, but the power-ups are limited to those levels, so they iterate on the different mechanics they give you with those power-ups. When you start off with the frog gloves or the time stopper or anything like that, they'll give you really simplistic, I shouldn't say simplistic, but easier platforming challenges to get through with them. By the end of the game, there's some really crazy stuff they start throwing at you, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely put it on your radar, listeners, if you haven't checked it out yet. It's the most Nintendo PlayStation game to ever exist. All right, my number one, kind of in the same vein, it is a platformer, and that is Donkey Kong Bonanza.
I figured it would be.
So let me preface this by saying, I like Donkey Kong well enough, but I would not consider myself to be a hardcore Donkey Kong fan. My favorite DK games are actually the arcade style games. I love the arcade game, the original Donkey Kong 94 on Game Boy is great. Even Mario vs. DK, I had a lot of fun with that. And in terms of the Nintendo platformer pantheon, Mario at the top. Number 2, Kirby. I would even put Yoshi at number 3. Yoshi has a lot of bad games, but Yoshi's Island is better than any DK country game, which may be sacrilegious, and maybe people have turned off the podcast.
I think different strokes for different folks, but I also don't think you're necessarily wrong with that.
And then I guess by default 4th would be Donkey Kong. But here, Donkey Kong has definitely moved up some rungs on the ladder, because this is, I think, they never before seen take on a platformer. And I hesitate to call it a platformer because it is like an action adventure game, as opposed to Astrobot is what I would call a gap jumper. There's a gap, you jump over it. Donkey Kong Bonanza is not so much of a gap jumper as it is you exploring and attacking, and there are those jump over a hole types of segments in the game. But I would say that's not the game's focus. It is really focused on manipulating the world in a way. The way you interact with the level is, I've never seen this before in a platformer, where you have to destroy different sections of the platformer to progress, or you can also build up parts of it to progress. And just the way you interact with the level, I've never seen before in any type of game. Of course, you got something like Minecraft where you do tear up through the world, but that's not a platformer. That's more of a survival game. How you interact with the world is totally unique for a platformer. And the levels are just so intricately designed. Okay, you've got the ice level, you've got the forest level, so forth and so on. But they take, okay, ice level plus this equals something you've never seen before in a game. Like the ice level, they're populated by zebras, and they run ice cream shop, and they have a lot of machines that are like ice cream machines. So a lot of the levels are these like frozen mechanical gigantic structures or buildings or machines because they need to make ice cream. But then when you dig deeper, oh, actually now it's a lava level. You've dug into the earth and now everything is really hot. And they totally changed the rules of the level within the level itself. And there's another one later on in the game where you go to a area populated by snakes. It's called the Radiant Layer. Everything is dark and you use light in order to interact with things. So you need to like punch a hole in the ceiling for light to come down, and then the light will change something. So you're playing with darkness and light in this level. But then you dig deeper and then it becomes a big open desert area. So now it's, okay, this is the desert world now. They've totally changed what type of level it is. And there's so many weird and unexpected moments in this game like this. There's another one that's like a theme park, but it's themed after fast food. So it's a fast food theme park. You go in a boat and the water is grease, like hamburger grease or deep fryer grease. It's so funny. And you're on salt and the salt will get cooked by the grease. So you have to think about that. It's just such an interesting take on all these levels. No level feels like, oh, this is the forest level, this is the grass level. They always have some unique take on it. And also the way you move in the game is so interesting and fun. Of course, Mario Odyssey, maybe the best controlling platformer ever. The way you move Mario is just so fantastic. You have all these different options. And Donkey Kong, I wouldn't say it's as deep as Mario, but almost as deep. And it's at least very different in the way you maneuver, because he can punch through the level. Like Mario can't do that. So how do you make interesting movement tech through that. Of course, he's got this forward punch, he's got his up punch, he's got a down punch, and you got to use all these to your advantage in different ways. You can rip up part of the level and then surf on it to gain some speed. And then you can also throw that piece you're surfing on down to give you extra jumping power. A typical way to move is you sprint and then you roll and then you jump, then you do like a long jump. And then when you're in the air, if you do down punch, the animation kind of lifts you up a little bit. So you get a little bit more air. And then you cancel your down punch with another forward leap. And then you do a clapping attack to get a little bit more horizontal movement. And so you string these together, all his different abilities, to do all these really fun platformer segments. So again, going back to, okay, it's not a jump over a whole type of platformer game, but Donkey Kong has a lot of incredible movement tech that really lets you cover a lot of ground in interesting ways. You can really skip over huge parts of the level if you master the movement tech. And the game kind of rewards you for doing that because there's always something hidden somewhere. There's so many things to collect. And it is a weird sequel to Donkey Kong 64 in a way. It is closer to Donkey Kong 64 than not, which you really wouldn't think Nintendo would go back to because even though it was very well regarded when it came out, it got really good reviews. I think nowadays people are saying that it killed the 3D platformer, which is not true, or it was too big for its britches. A lot of the DK64 DNA is here. This time they do it much better than they did back in the day in 1999. It's rich with content. There's dozens of hours of gameplay here. Really good characters as well. You're teamed up with Pauline, the kid Pauline, and she's not annoying at all. She's actually quite funny. And I think the story is interesting. I won't spoil any twists or anything, but it does feel like how Kirby Air Riders was a love letter to Kirby. This is definitely a love letter to Donkey Kong. Not just Donkey Kong Country, but Donkey Kong 64, the arcade games, just every single Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, just every single part of Donkey Kong's history is in this game. And even me, I'm not a huge Donkey Kong fan, but I do like the arcade game. So I love it when the arcade elements pop up here as well. And it's just a fully featured, really intricate and unique take on a platformer, or I guess an action adventure game. And what's ironic is that when I was playing the game, it wasn't gelling with me. Like the first one or two levels, I thought, okay, this is fun. You know, this is not Mario Odyssey 2, or this is not to the level of that game.
Yeah.
But then I would say I got to maybe the third or fourth level. And then I went back to the first level, taking what I've learned about how the game is structured and how the game plays. And then going back to that first level, using what I've learned from the other levels, it clicked for me. I understood how the levels were laid out. I understood where you could go in the level. I understood how you're supposed to traverse the world. And then from that point on, it became much more fun. And this game accelerates in such an incredible way. I would say each level is more fun than the last level. It gets better and better as the game goes along. It's a fantastic finale as well. Like Galaxy, it is introducing new gameplay mechanics as you get deeper and deeper into the game. I won't spoil what the level is, but the mechanic I'll spoil a little bit. It's this huge open area, and there's kind of like these sky islands or sky sections, separated sections. They're so far away. So like, how are you going to get over there? It's like a mile away. And then the mechanic of the level is that, you throw the ground into the air, and then it will make the ground in the air. So for example, imagine you throw a boulder, and then that boulder makes an arch that you can now walk across. In order to make more, you got to dig up part of the ground you made to make more ground. That game mechanic is really fun to interact with. You're making the level as you move along the level. And the game is just constantly introducing new ideas like that. And so the game is just filled with those fantastic, whoa, I can't believe I'm doing this type of moments. So many awesome segments. It's just fantastic game. They totally nailed it. It's such a unique take on both Donkey Kong, on 3D platformers in general. And they went totally different direction. It's not Mario Odyssey 2, but it's from a lot of the same people. And a lot of the DNA is in here, but they kind of went a different route. I could definitely see people saying, I loved Bonanza more than Odyssey. That is possible because it does something different than Odyssey. Similar to what Mario Kart World did. Okay, we can't really iterate. We got to do a different direction. And it might be a little controversial for some, but I think the direction they went for both games, I think they nailed what they wanted to accomplish. And so Donkey Kong Bonanza, again, if you told me January 1st, 2025, Your games of the year, Donkey Kong is going to be your game of the year. I would think, no way. And I'm not a Donkey Kong guy. I'm a Mario guy. And, Silk Song is going to be on your list. No way. I don't like Hollow Knight. And Sakurai, he's going to make another Kirby's Air Ride game. I'm like, no, he's not. And even if he did, it wouldn't be that great because I didn't even like Kirby's Air Ride. So yeah, this year for me, a lot of great surprises. I'm very happy with Switch 2's first year. The philosophy of Switch 2 so far has been, let's go kind of a different direction for our games. Let's give experiences that are not on Switch 1. It could be easier to just, okay, here's a new 3D Mario game for Switch 2. Here it is. They took a risk and they said, hey, let's make Donkey Kong Bonanza. And Sakurai, instead of making Air Ride, make Smash Brothers. We need Smash Brothers year one. They could just have Smash Brothers. It could be Mario Kart. It could be like traditional Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, Mario. And that would be the safest route to go down. But they pivoted and gave us these really different gameplay experiences, which I really appreciate. And yes, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, that's still coming. But I just think Switch 2 had a really interesting first half of a year, which I think maybe some people won't agree with because they do want Where's Mario? They want Smash Brothers, but they took some risks, which I really appreciate Nintendo taking. So yes, that's my game of the year, Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Donkey Kong Bonanza is the sole reason I want a Switch 2. I love, like I said, I'm a huge Donkey Kong 64 fan. That's one of my favorite games. One of my other hot takes is it's not as bad as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
But that, once again, conversation for a different day. Donkey Kong Bonanza was announced. I called that their next big 3D platformer is going to be Donkey Kong. I don't know why I felt that. I was just thinking, wouldn't that be cool? Pie in the sky prediction is that it's going to be this, and it just so happened to be right this one time. I was so happy when I saw that this got announced. Donkey Kong has been out of the 3D platformer game for so long. It was great to see a new one come out, and on top of that, to see that it got well reviewed. It's a complete departure from like almost any other platformer out there. It's not just a 3D platformer. It's almost like a 3D platformer adventure destructathon or something like that. It is so different than anything else, and I think that's a real testament to Nintendo trying something different. Like you said, Mono, taking a big swing. But Nintendo, like, they didn't take a lot of risks with the console itself. They're like, which honestly was smart. Like, why reinvent the wheel again when they don't have to? So I'm happy that while they didn't take a risk with the console, they are taking risks with the games. And I think that kind of is a like part of the Switch spirit almost, because if you look at the Switch, that system was able to take series that were relatively popular or had like a following and this and that, but they were never like anywhere near your Zeldas or your Mario or Smash or anything like that, and then bring them to a much more mainstream audience, i.e. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, i.e. freaking Animal Crossing New Horizons. I felt like for a while there, especially during 2020 through 2024, one of the most exciting things about Nintendo was just what weird, obscure thing are they going to try to reinvent now? Or maybe not weird and obscure, but which franchise are they going to try to reinvent for this system? And almost all of them, not every single one, but almost all of them hit in some way. And it was really cool to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I'm looking forward to the future because those tentpoles are coming. 3D Mario is coming. 3D Zelda is coming. But in the meantime, we've got a lot of really interesting experiments and big swings from Nintendo. So I'm looking forward to 2026. So 2025, it's over. Before we wrap up, let's go through our 5 to 1 one more time. So Josh, your game of the year 2025, 5 to 1. Hit me one more time with them.
Medal of Honor Underground at number 5, Ratchet & Clank at number 4, Castlevania at number 3, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle at number 2, and Astrobot at number 1.
Mine is number 5, Stray Children. Number 4, Hollow Knight Silk Song. Number 3, Mario Kart World. Number 2, Kirby Air Riders. Number 1, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Great year for games, and I'm really excited to see what next year has in store. Until then, Josh, where can people find you?
If you liked what you heard here, you can find me over at the Still Loading podcast, where I describe it as a gaming grab bag podcast, where I do a bunch of different video game related topics. I do deep dives on individual games with a sprinkle of video game history thrown in there for a little bit of context. I also do interviews with people in the industry. I've interviewed voice actors like Sean Chiplock and Sissy Jones and David Kay and John Stockard, a bunch of cool people like that. And then I've also do weirder ideas or conversation based episodes. I've done an episode on deconstructing the Nintendo bump. Why does Nintendo get so much favorable treatment in terms of game history circles and stuff like that? Topics like that. And then just stranger ideas like the Final Fantasy draft, which is what happens when Final Fantasy and fantasy sports mix. But you don't really need to know anything about fantasy sports to enjoy the episode. But yeah, that is the Still Loading Podcast. And if you want to follow me on socials, at stillloadingpodcast.com on Blue Sky, at stillloadingpod on Instagram, and at stillloadingpod on Twitch.
Great. Josh, the hardest working man in podcasting. Every week you're putting out huge episodes. I'm bi-weekly. I cannot do every week, but you're out there every week putting out long and amazing episodes about interesting topics. So listeners, check out Still Loading Podcast. So the links to everything are in the description. So again, listeners, check it out. Josh from the Still Loading Podcast, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you once again for having me, Mono. Always a pleasure.
Congrats to Donkey Kong Bonanza. If you want to hear me gush more about it, I do have 2 other episodes where I dig deep into that game, pun intended. But before you check those out, we got to get into the feature about Japanese gaming pamphlets, a de facto tradition for Tokyo Game Life, mostly because years ago I didn't know what to cover. And I thought, hey, these free pamphlets at Japanese game stores at this time of year are pretty interesting, so let's look at them. Now, there are free pamphlets, flyers, magazines, and so forth all year round, but the holiday season is when Nintendo and others really ramp up the production of these things. And of course, Yodobashi and Bit Camera released their toy and game catalogs detailing all the deals they're offering before the year is up. I've got a big stack of them, so let's tear into them. I guess I should lead with the Nintendo Software Lineup 2025 Winter Guide, a free 81-page magazine highlighting the big Switch and Switch 2 releases. Normally around this time of year, we have Nintendo Magazine, which is even bigger and has unique articles and other really interesting layout spreads. But for whatever reason, we just have a more straightforward catalog this time. Maybe because they wanted to make it a bit more direct, but I hope they haven't phased out Nintendo Magazine. I do understand not wanting to confuse consumers, especially when you are trying to get them into the new Switch 2 ecosystem, so maybe for 2025 this more straightforward catalog is a bit more useful. On the cover you've got Kirby, DK, Mario Kart, and Pokemon. Where's Metroid? Not on the cover, I'll tell you that much. But these are the big 4 holiday titles for Nintendo for the Japanese market. And opening up the catalog, you're greeted with some Super Mario Bros. 40th Anniversary splash pages, including a Super Mario Bros. History chronicling all the Super Mario Bros. Games from 1985 to now. What is and isn't a mainline Mario game? A subject of debate for some folks, but Nintendo lays it all out here. Pretty much every Mario platformer counts, including Land, including USA, including the new series. Even something like Mario Maker is considered to be of the same lineage as Super Mario Galaxy. And even Mario Run. They do count 3D World plus Bowser's Fury as its own entry, which I do think is a little odd, but at Universal in Osaka, they also have a Mario timeline on the ground, and 2021 is included, so who am I to judge? You can always fight Nintendo, but you will never win. But once you're past what is and isn't a Mario game, the catalog is mostly filled with splash pages of Nintendo's major titles. The index also has an explanation about what can and cannot be played on a Switch and a Switch 2. There's also a little keycard explanation, and ironically the game they use as an example for the keycard is Pokopia, which is maybe the most controversial keycard game. But on the next page, you've got 2 huge pages dedicated to Air Riders, 2 pages for Pokemon ZA, Hyrule Warriors, Donkey Kong, Mario Kart World, and yes, the biggest third-party release for Japan, aka Momotaro Dentetsu 2, also gets a 2-page splash treatment. I really do like the look of these. They are really colorful and feature a ton of art and a good rundown of the game's features. Now, does Metroid Prime 4 get 2 pages? Phew, yeah, it does. Don't worry. Miles is here too, so he's included. There are some one-pagers though. The Zelda Switch 2 editions have to share a page, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Starcrossed World also gets a solo page. The much-maligned Welcome Tour and Dragon Drive also get their own individual pages. It is a little funny to group them next to each other, but they are both less expensive digital-only titles. But after this, you enter the grid, where each page has about 3 or so third-party games that they're highlighting. The usual suspects are here: Persona, Octopath Traveler 0, Street Fighter 6, and so on. Suika Game Planet is also in this catalog despite it not having a hard date as of this recording. And some digital titles are also included, like Silksong. Then after the 2025 titles, we get a peek into 2026, with a big 2-page splash layout about Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 Edition and the 3.0 update. No new info, but it is cool to see this info laid out in a concise way. That trailer was like 12 minutes long. Just give me the 2-page highlights. We also get pages on Mario Tennis Fever, Pokopia, Yoshi, Dragon Quest VII, and some third-party games like Resident Evil and Final Fantasy VII. Sadly, no Fire Emblem, but that game doesn't have any sort of date yet. The rest of the catalog is mostly focusing on Switch 2 features, and some of this stuff seems to be straight out of the Switch 2 magazine that Nintendo put out earlier this year. There's also some focus on Switch 1 games, so Tomodachi Life and Rhythm Heaven do get a bit of love. And the final pages highlight Nintendo Online, including advertising the Virtual Boy and the most important Nintendo product, which is, of course, Nintendo Today. The back also has a teaser for the Super Mario Galaxy movie, but it is just a spacey background with the logo. This catalog is not as visually exciting as Nintendo Magazine, but it does its job with informing the layman about what Nintendo Switch 2 has to offer. The other big one is, of course, the Yodobashi Camera 2025 Toy and Game Catalog. 103 pages of great Japanese toys, games, and just random stuff you can and will buy. Of course, the iconic cymbal-clanging monkey is indeed on the cover, priced at 5,350 yen. I swore this was 4,900 yen before, but hey, everything is going up, even the monkeys. Now, I won't go page by page here, but about 40% of the catalog is dedicated to games, and Nintendo has its own section. For comparison's sake, Square, PS5, and Sega have to share a section. The Nintendo section has this great holiday-themed layout featuring the new Mario art and some Yodobashi exclusive deals, like special packaging if you buy a Switch 2 or Switch 2 software. Now, what's the first game they highlight? That's right, Kirby Air Riders. It gets its own page, as does the Galaxy Collection. And these are going to be the 2 major movers this holiday season in Japan. I think people have completely written off the Galaxy Collection, but I would not be surprised if it's the best-selling Nintendo game below Mario Kart World this holiday season. Not just in Japan, but worldwide. Switch 1 sales, they still count. Nintendo is still getting that money. But then you enter Gridville, which highlights all the other games. Metroid Prime 4 has this exclusive freebie, or Omake, which is like a plastic stand with Samus in a circle. I cannot explain this despite seeing it with my own eyes. It's like an acrylic stand, but it's round. It's an incredibly weird thing to give away, and it doesn't look that great either, but it is a collector's item if you want it. The next section is for Konami, Namco, and I'll give you 100 guesses, and I bet you couldn't get it. Go ahead, guess what other Japanese game developer is sharing space with Konami and Namco? 3, 2, 1. Imagineer, the folks behind Quest 64, but more recently, the fitness boxing games. They're pulling double duty this holiday season with Disney Miranus Fitness. I don't know what Miranus is, but I know fitness. And also a game called Magical Craft, The Cat and the Magic Dress. A game I didn't know existed, but the dev is actually Sen Sophia of Style Savvy and N64 wrestling fame. And yes, it does indeed look in the same wheelhouse as Style Savvy. Each game has its own big page compared to Bandai Namco, where DBZ, Everybody's Golf, and Katamari have to share a page. I would love to know how much it costs to rent a whole page for the Yodobashi game catalog. Konami does have 2 pages though, as one is for Momotaro and one is for everything else, aka Metal Gear and Baseball. You get a Dragon Quest page for Square, then a solo page for PS5 advertising the hardware, and only 2 games here, Astrobot and Death Stranding 2. Ironically, the cheaper 55,000 yen PS5 is nowhere to be seen, which is very strange. You'd think that would be the one thing they would be pushing the hardest, and at the actual stores, there's quite a lot of advertisements for it, but it's not to be seen in this hollowed holiday guide. But you've got more games, a peripheral section including a lot of Kirby-themed stuff like controllers and a carrying case. There's a My Melody gaming chair that goes for 49,000 yen, so slightly cheaper than a Switch 2. There's also a few other pages dedicated to VR, the ROG Xbox Ally, and they close out with some PC gaming peripherals. Pretty standard, but always fun to flip through these, and I always enjoy seeing just which games get what space. Stuff like Urban Dissolution Center and Dinkum do have slightly larger sections in the grid, so you know they're important. Now, how can rival Bic Camera stack up with their toy and game catalog? Poorly. Their Happy Christmas mag is nowhere near as big, a paltry 69 pages. And not even a Nintendo section, but instead a generic gaming one. But front and center is indeed Switch 2 along with its peripherals. We don't get any real big splash pages for individual games, but they do try to integrate the other related products next to the games. Like the page featuring Air Riders does have a bunch of other Kirby toys. And I'd say the PlayStation section is bigger, with a big page dedicated to Astrobot and the PS5 hardware, but again, no cheaper 55,000 yen version. Did the memo not go out? What's going on here? We've got some VR pages, Dragon Quest HD 2D, Like a Dragon 2 Kiwami, and Sonic Racing all share a page for some reason. And yes, we do have a singular page for Xbox with the iconic "This is an Xbox" marketing campaign, taking up most of the page, with a couple of expensive Xboxes you can buy listed on the bottom. Those are the big three catalog-style holiday guides, but there are a bunch of other random pamphlets as well. There's one solely dedicated to the Mario 40th anniversary, where a lot of the content is in the previous catalog, but I do like these smaller, more compact splash pages, and every game gets its own page, even Mario Maker 2. Next is a fold-out pamphlet for Mushi Jinki, which is a card game based on fighting bugs. I have never heard of this, but I do like games set in a world where card games are the most important thing. There's also a Nintendo Switch Online pamphlet, which is fairly old, I think even before Switch 2 was released. It mostly focuses on quote-unquote free stuff you get with NSO, like retro games and DLC. I do like seeing all this retro game box art reprinted in 2025 in some physical form. You can just walk into a game store in Japan and see the original paneled upon box art. I mean, that's awesome. What else? Here's a 2026 game, Like a Dragon 3 Kiwami Dark Ties. Is it Like a Dragon 3 Kiwami or Like a Dragon Kiwami 3? Whatever it is, this is just a small single flyer with 3 on the front, and then the other Switch 2 Like a Dragon games are on the back. But hey, we are getting these at a pretty rapid pace, right? Switch 2 already has 0, 1, 2, and 3 by February. I do think it will be a while before it's 1-to-1 with PS5 though. And yes, the game I mentioned earlier, Magical Craft, The Cat and the Magic Dress, has a 2-page fold-out pamphlet here showing all those beautiful, beautiful dresses. The art style is pretty nice. It kind of has a pastel watercolor look to it, not unlike the Atelier games. It's on sale now in Japan, so you gotta buy it so we can get Quest 64 on NSO. More leaflets, there's a single-page flyer for Minato Machikoro, which is based on a popular Japanese board game. I actually played this on a Steam Deck at a gaming event, and I think both the board game and the digital version are quite popular here in Japan. Then we've got a big booklet for Mario Kart World featuring the boy band Snowman. This was released during the Switch 2's launch, but is still populating game stores. It's very well put together and features 10 pages of great photos and art. Definitely a nice collector's items for fans of Mario Kart or Snowman. Then going back to Imagineer, a postcard-sized flyer for Disney Marinus Fitness, and a slightly bigger than postcard-sized leaflet for... I guess this is for the camera. One part is for Mario Kart World, and the other is for Jamboree TV, with a big focus on the camera features. And final pamphlet, we've finally reached the end, and what a way to go out, the Switch version of Atelier Resliana, which is one of those cool fold-out pamphlets where the inside has some nice art, and then you fold it even more to get the game info. Did people like this game? I think Yumiya has its fans, but I don't know if the console version of the mobile Atelier game made waves. But anyways, that was a brief rundown of all the amazing free pamphlets that are now in Japanese game stores. If you're in Japan, if you're in Yodobashi Camera, grab some. They're free. You can take them home. They do make for a nice souvenir if it's a game you like. Or if it's for a game you've never heard of. Alright, that's it for the feature, so let's check out some news. Let's start with some Tokyo-centered news. And by news, I mean more things you can buy. Did you think just because the year is only a few days away from ending, we wouldn't have a new Earthbound pop-up shop in 2025? You absolute fool. Mother no Okurimono, or Mother's Gifts, is the newest pop-up shop themed after holiday gifts, or really just gifts in general. Hobonichi has been drip-feeding the new merch. There's a big Onet rug, there's a Mr. Saturn lip balm, there's Earthbound gift wrapping, Starman socks, Smash sweaters, kind of a random assortment of goods, but I suppose they are all sort of Christmas gift adjacent. The pop-up shop will not be at the usual spot in Shibuya Parko, but instead in Tobichi in Kanda, which is the official Hobonichi shop in Tokyo. So a bit farther for me than usual, but if I can, I want to check it out. I might do a feature on it as well. Tobichi has definitely been on the list of things I want to cover, but it's not that big, so could I just do this pop-up shop and Tobichi? Should I split it? I'll work out the logistics later. But closer to me is Nintendo Tokyo, and there's brand new Metroid merch. This is the biggest wave of new Metroid merch the store has ever seen. The existing Metroid stuff was really just that, merch that was created elsewhere and then just shoved into Nintendo Tokyo. But now we have our first real deal Nintendo Store exclusive line of Metroid goods. And they are indeed good goods. The highlight is the giant plush arm cannon, so you can become a soft version of Samus. There's also Metroid molds if you want to make some Metroid ice cubes. They are weak to that after all. Plus a morph ball and squishy Metroid keychains, along with a cool Switch 2 carrying case that looks like it would fit into the series. The Prime 4 marketing has been very truncated and maybe disappointing for some, especially here in Japan. It didn't really get a whole lot. I didn't even see a train station ad for it. Now, obviously, when it comes to holiday titles in Japan, like I said earlier, Mario Kart, DK, Kirby, and Pokemon are going to outsell Metroid Prime 4 over here. That's just a fact. But considering the price tag of the game's development, you'd think they'd push it a bit more or have some more interesting marketing stunts to get it on people's radar. And Pasalabo in Shinjuku will host a Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster themed pop-up shop cafe from December 13th. It will have food and drink themed after classic Final Fantasy titles. Square Enix Cafe sadly doesn't exist anymore, but these pop-up shops seem to be a temporary replacement for it. There was a Final Fantasy IX one in the same spot, and it seemed pretty popular. And I have to imagine the upkeep for a pop-up shop is significantly less than running your own cafe in Akihabara. These are actually a little hard to get into. You do need a reservation quite ahead of time, but I'll see if I can make it. But the neighboring Katsugoro did have special Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest Taiyaki during the FF9 Cafe, so I'm curious to see if they have another FF collab too, and that one is way easier to take part in. You just line up. Do you still not have a Switch 2 in Japan? Well, slightly good news because Gaio has announced they will be ending the lottery system, and it will be first come, first serve if they have stock. But you do need their membership card. Anecdotally, I have seen it in stock at Gaio, Yodobashi, and Bit Camera, but with Yodobashi and Bit Camera, you do need those shops' respective credit cards. Not membership cards, credit cards. But there does seem to be an influx of Switch 2 stock right now before the holiday season, which is great. I think a lot of people will be able to put one under a Christmas tree in just a few weeks. And the Switch 2 sales for the first week of December are over 200,000 units in Japan, which is the biggest week since launch. So yes, the stock situation is definitely improving. Anecdotally, at Bit Camera, I did see some tourists try to buy a Switch 2, and the staff was trying to explain the situation about the language-locked model and also that you need the credit card. I should have jumped in, but hey, if they listened to this podcast, they would have known all about it. We also got an update on the Super Mario Galaxy movie in Japan. Maya Sakamoto will voice Rosalina, and Daiki Yamashita will be Bowser Jr. Sakamoto is a voice acting legend. Name something, and she's probably in it. She even voices a character in Boku no Natsuyasumi too. But I think a lot of gamers maybe know her best for voicing Aerith in Final Fantasy VII related media. Also, I found out she is only 45, which is crazy since she's been voice acting since the 90s. And Daiki Yamashita, I don't know who this guy is, but he voices Deku in My Hero Academia, so I think a lot of people do indeed know him. Now, knowing nothing about him, I can firmly say that he ain't no Maya Sakamoto. The Game Awards happened, and congratulations to Claire Obscure Expedition 33 for winning Game of the Year. No Switch 2 version announced just yet, but I do have to believe that's coming. If I had to guess, I would say late 2026. Otherwise, fairly light on Switch 2 news. Donkey Kong and Mario Kart World did take home prizes, but for new games, the biggest one for me, I think, is Pragmata is coming to Switch 2. Capcom has been a big supporter of Switch 2 so far, but I believe Pragmata was going to be outside of the Switch 2 development window, but I guess I was wrong. They have shown off some Switch 2 screenshots, and yeah, it looks pretty close to the PS5 version, and I think developers have been making smart changes when it comes to optimizing their games for Switch 2. I recently completed Star Wars Outlaws on Switch 2, and I'll talk about that in a future episode, but a lot of the pullbacks they did are very, very smart, and you wouldn't really notice it unless you compared the PS5 and the Switch 2 versions back to back, so hopefully Pragmata is the same. For Switch 2 exclusive games, Kepler Interactive announced Orbitals, which is an 80s-inspired sci-fi co-op game. The art looks absolutely incredible. It really does capture the 80s anime aesthetic. I'm not much of a co-op gamer, but if it has some sort of online feature, I might check it out. And I think the last big announcement for Switch 2 fans, Mega Man is back with Mega Man Dual Override. And it looks kind of like, a normal Mega Man platformer. Not visually interesting. The gameplay is exactly what you would expect. It is really Mega Man 12 and everything but name. I mean, I like Mega Man well enough, but I think you need a little bit more juice than just here's another Mega Man for me. Honestly, the one thing I want them to bring back is Battle Network. Believe it or not, the Battle Network subseries sells much better in Japan than the regular platformer Mega Man games. So for a lot of modern fans, Mega Man is Battle Network. I'm honestly surprised they haven't tried to bring that back outside of the collection, which I do believe sold quite well. So hey, Capcom, skip the platformers and bring back Battle Network. And last bit of news, Katsuhiro Harada is leaving Bandai Namco at the end of the year. He's best known for his work on the Tekken series, but he holds a general manager role at Bandai Namco and oversees many of their projects. A pretty surprising departure considering the importance of his role and his deep involvement with Tekken, which is one of, if not Namco's biggest IP. I'm sorry, I don't think Pac-Man World 2 Repack sold as much as Tekken 8. But I am very curious to see what he does next. Does he pull a Sakurai and make his own company? He's been at Bamco for over 30 years, so those are some long innings. But I can understand wanting to try something completely new after all that time. He is also still relatively young, only 55 years old, despite his extremely long career. He also dropped a SoundCloud mixtape during his announcement, which I gotta admit is a baller way to announce you are quitting a job. Sorry, I don't have a baller way to end the podcast, so let's just wrap it up now. Thanks as always for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app. Leave a 5-star review as well, it really helps. This podcast is also available on YouTube, so like and subscribe there as well. I'm on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, just search for Tokyo Game Life, or find the links in the podcast description. If you like the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends and on social media. The next episode will be on December 28th. See you next time. Matane!